All right, so without further ado.
Hey, thanks, Steve. Well, thanks, everybody. It's great to be here, and sorry that I have to run. This is just like a drop-in welcome back, but I'll come back for a proper meeting, sometime in the next month or month and a half. We're off to a great start, at least I think we are. I mean, I'm learning things every day. Learning about problems and challenges in the university every day, but things seem to be off to a pretty good start. And we are very excited with the number of people who are interested in Utah. And the best, I think, measure of success in the university is how many applicants we have to the university. And we're at record highs. We have 30,000 applications this year for 2,000 slots. So students keep getting more ambitious and better and better and better. Not that you're not great, but we're definitely on the rise, and it's a very exciting time to be here. So we've got a lot of issues to work on together this coming year. Certainly the spring weekend and how that's going to evolve, and Steve's been giving that a lot of thought since last spring. I'm pretty open-minded on most dimensions, but hopefully Jeff Salmeyer started some pretty good discussions with you. So, and we have some ideas about the rec center, something we've talked about. So we haven't forgotten about some of the major ideas that USG brought last year. So anyway, welcome back, everybody. Look forward to coming here, answering all your questions, arguing with you, agreeing with you sometimes, and I think we'll have a lot of fun. So thanks for doing this. You guys are the leaders here. I mean, the university is built for the students. You're people that are really committed to the university, dedicated, take the time, got dressed up. You're a very special group to us, and we really need your counsel and your ideas as we're trying to shape the university, especially the student experience and the academic experience. So again, I'll see you guys soon. I'm sorry to be in and out, but we'll have some good discussions this fall. So thanks, everybody. Thanks.
It's an incredible honor to have you here. So thank you so much for coming. I guess without further ado, we'll just enter into our business. So I hereby call for this legislative body of the Student Meeting at the University of Connecticut at 6:49 p.m. this 19th day of September 2012. Can you guys hear me? Turn it down. I don't know how to use these things. All right. So we're starting with roll call.
Marcus.
Yes.
Gallo.
Here.
O'Shane.
Here.
Hines.
Here.
Daniels.
Here.
Giardina.
Here.
Lowe.
Here.
Hockey.
Here.
Flores.
Present.
Birdie. Blue.
Here.
Alvarez.
Here.
Bosco. Casazola. Casazola. Chen.
Here.
Shane. Yeah. Thank you. Chaudhary. Chow. Craddock. Donnelly. Enos. Giardina. Gooding.
Here.
Dugan. Grant.
Yes.
I don't know how to pronounce your name. Anthony. I am
In Persia.
in Persia.
Yes.
I'm sorry about that, Anthony. Elena, how do you pronounce that? Ines? Ines. So yes. Jones.
Here.
Clark.
Here.
Lundin.
Here.
Lakshmanan Nayagam. Manfredi. McClellan. Manetti.
Here.
Murphy.
Here.
Nordness.
Here.
Paul.
Here.
Perez. Forbes. Rana.
Here.
Rana.
Here.
Ripken.
Here.
Sargent.
Here.
Schofield. Smith.
Here.
Smith. Kyle Smith.
Here.
Verbeek. Violet.
Here.
Ward.
Here.
Wanaberger. Wiley.
Here.
Okay. Is there anyone here for public comment? I know we have President Herbst, but is there anyone else? Actually, all right, seeing none, we'll move into swearing in of the newly elected senators. Justice Slew.
Do I need a? Can everybody hear me? Yeah?
There's
Okay.
a mic, there's a mic.
Okay. Hi, everybody. This is very exciting. So, everybody, if the new senators could please stand up. And if you would raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I
Do solemnly promise
do solemnly promise
to uphold the Constitution,
to uphold the Constitution,
bylaws, and rules of the undergraduate student government
bylaws, and rules of the undergraduate student government
at the University of Connecticut in Stores.
at the University of Connecticut in Stores.
I promise that I shall consistently and faithfully
I promise that I shall consistently and faithfully
earn the vote of the constituents
earn the votes of the constituents
whom I have been elected to serve and represent. Finally, I shall maintain a vigilant eye on the welfare of
Finally, I shall maintain a vigilant eye on the welfare of
the entire student government that we may all diligently work together. Sorry. Of the entire student government that we may all diligently work together to successfully advocate for, represent, and serve the entire student body.
and serve the entire student body.
Congratulations, you're all
Congratulations to the newly elected senators. I mentioned in my email that we were going to do sexual harassment training from 7 to 7:30. It's mandatory for us to undergo this training, and according to our bylaws. I think it's in bylaw 1. So if there are no objections, I'd like to motion to suspend the rules and begin our sexual harassment training.
Second.
Well, seeing no objections, we'll move on.
Okay, so for the sexual harassment training, I would like to introduce Catherine Holgerson to conduct our sexual harassment training, and it's going to be about 45 minutes. So, stay with us, and please don't leave because this is really important, even if you're a member of the exec. Okay? Thanks.
Good evening, everybody. How y'all doing? Good. Good. Okay. Can you hear me okay? Yeah? Yeah? Okay. If not, just give me kind of give me a high sign. Let me know that the voice is fading a little bit, okay? I'm passing around little scraps of paper. You all can make sure that you have one. We're going to use that as part of our session.
understanding of what that meant. So we want to explore a little bit about what it is that you already know about this, but we want to make sure that you leave here understanding what the university's definition of sexual harassment is. We're also going to talk a little bit about sexual assault as a form of sexual harassment. We've got some new policies on campus, and it's important for you all, especially as student leaders, to make sure that you're familiar with and that you're communicating to the students that you represent about these changes. How many of you knew we had a new sexual assault response policy? No. Okay. So it's important that you know about that and that you're able to articulate that to other folks on campus. We're going to talk about how to really know whether or not this is a problem. I'm going to share with you some information from a research report that was done in 2005 from the American Association of University Women that looked at sexual harassment on college campuses across the country. We're also going to talk a little bit about workplace consequences because to some degree the environment that you all are creating is a workplace, right? It's going to be an opportunity for you to be able to engage with each other to get the work done that you need to do as senators. It also is going to be an opportunity to work together with other folks in committees. So there may be folks that you're inviting into your spaces who are not necessarily part of this collective group, but will become sort of affiliates of that, okay? And then also, this is just good stuff to know. How many of you want to get a job after you leave? Anybody want to get a job? Okay, right? So this is good stuff to know when you so this is good stuff to know when you leave here because I can tell you that there are obligations in the corporate world and in higher education around this training anyway. So being able to go in and talk to somebody and say, look, I've been thinking about these issues. And maybe I've even done something about these issues. Gives you something that makes you a little bit more unique than the other candidates that they're probably going to see coming through their doors. So we're going to talk about the workplace consequences, workplace consequences. We're going to talk a little bit about the resources. And then I'm going to leave you with a question of really thinking about, okay, so now that you have this, what are you going to do with it? Okay? Does that make sense for everybody? Yeah? All right, so I just want to get a little temperature check of who all is in the room. Those of you who are new, can you raise your hand again for me? Okay, congratulations. Welcome. How many of you have been through some sort of sexual harassment prevention session before? Yeah, okay, tell me what context.
I went to Johns Hopkins University.
Okay. Okay. Were you involved in summer?
I was the same one for the meeting.
Got it. Okay, so you're one of my regulars in the room then. Well, you had somebody had hands up over here. Yeah.
In high school, we had some.
Say again.
In high school, we had some.
Okay, high school student council. Anybody else? Okay. Is there anybody who went through this training last year as part of USG? Okay. You all, I'm going to put you to work a little. Okay. So you're going to notice that we're going to take a little bit of a break when we're halfway through the quiz. I'm going to ask you to come up and help me out with something. Are you in with that? Give me some head nods. uninterrupted or unchecked, are allowed to continue and become more egregious, more complaints that rise to the level of complaints, right? And so when I told that joke, you laughed hysterically, right? So I'm going to think that I'm going to assume that you must think it's super funny, right? And when I touched you like that, Jason, you seem to be okay with it. So Anthony, I'm sure I can touch you like that too, right? Oh, okay. All right. So, so again, right? There are all these. I will guarantee you that if you have not already, at some point in your life, you will experience or witness something that, if it had been interrupted, would not have contributed to an environment that allowed sexual harassment. And we're going to talk a little bit more later on about how this relates directly to your environment, right? What are the things that happen every day in your environment, and what can you do to interrupt those things? So that's what we mean by the second goal. And then finally, we want to make sure that you have some strategies for dealing with it, right? Because the reality is, the more that we talk about it, sometimes folks will often say like, oh, well, I didn't realize that that's what that was, right? And so I didn't know there was something I could go and talk to you about that. Or I didn't know that when my friend told me that story, that there was actually a label for what that experience was. And so again, if nothing else, we want to make sure, especially as student leaders, that folks understand that you can be a resource for them in getting connected to the support that they need should they be experiencing it. Does that make sense to folks? Yeah? Okay. So here's where I put you all to work. If you could partner up with somebody next to you, behind you, in front of you, if you need to do some groups of 3, that's fine. What I want you to do, I'm going to show you a quick snippet of the situation. And I want you to, with your partner, talk about whether or not you think it's sexual harassment. It definitely is. It definitely is not. Or if you're not sure, talk with your partner about what information you need to be able to assess whether or not it's sexual harassment. Does that make sense for folks? Clear on the instructions? All right, find your person. Everybody got somebody? Yeah? Okay. So this is the first one we're going to look at. A worker tells a sexually explicit joke to a group of coworkers, including men and women. And on the bottom of the scale from strongly agree to strongly disagree, or I'm not sure, in the middle. I'll give you about a minute and a half to talk to your folks about whether or not you think it is. Don't have enough information. What information would you need then?
I would need to know if anybody was uncomfortable with it.
Was anybody uncomfortable with it? Okay.
I guess the context of the coworkers. If you're outside of the workplace and you're with your coworkers, it may not be that situation. You may be at a bar with friends who happen to be your coworkers. They would all be okay with it.
Okay. So there's a couple things in that. It depends on the context. Maybe you're outside the workplace at a bar and maybe they're all okay with it. How would you know if they're all okay with it?
If you told jokes like that around the floor, if they've made similar jokes to you, if they don't tell you, if they laugh or something like that.
Okay, so if they told jokes like that, if you told jokes like that before and they laughed, I saw you should go ahead on that. You want to comment on that?
Well, sexual harassment is defined in the workplace and volunteer site. People might agree in sites like that where they're too uncomfortable to say something against it, which then you might not know if they agree with it or not.
Okay. All right, so maybe people are too uncomfortable to say something we don't really know.
I was thinking in the context that you were at work, and I was just going to say that
sexual joke at work would never be appropriate. What do y'all think about that? Is that true? Yeah, yeah.
I mean, during the summer, I work at a summer camp, and I'm with these people 24 hours a day. So I think it depends on your relationship. Technically, I'm working with them 24 hours a day. If I make an inappropriate joke, I mean, it happens. Like, we had a really, really close relationship. We often tell each other anything. So I don't consider that to be sexual harassment. If it did cross the line, if it was like attacking someone, yes. But if it was just a general joke, I don't think so.
So there's a difference between inappropriate versus attacking somebody, does that sort of make a difference?
I'm not going to say that. So I think it's a difference. While I agree that it's not never appropriate to celebrate your next birthday, it's a significant difference between level of appropriate and sexual harassment.
Okay, so again, it's sort of back to the issue of what might be inappropriate versus what is sexual harassment. So a couple of you talked about sort of the relationships that you have with folks, right? So maybe it's a relationship where you're going to a bar with folks and having a conversation, or maybe it's a relationship where you actually are still in the workplace, but you've been working with them so much that you feel like you have the kind of relationship that you can say anything to them. How do you know? How do you know when you have that kind of relationship with somebody? You don't. Come on, you know who you can say things in front of and who you can't, right? Not always, because I mean, even to your best friend, something might have happened between the time when you last saw that person from now, where now that's not appropriate for you to say that in front of them before it was. Okay. So maybe we had done it before, but maybe something changed for that person. Okay. But you know that you do have different levels of relationship with folks. Yeah.
I think there's a difference when you're supposed to have a level of trust where you can have conversations that might be risky or might push a boundary, but that's part of growing.
Okay. So part of growing as friends is sort of pushing these boundaries and having the trust level to be able to do that, right? It really is kind of trial and error, right? It goes back to what Corey was saying about before. Well, you throw it out there and you see what happens, right? How many of you have ever either yourself said or been in the company of somebody who said, okay, I'm going to tell a dirty joke, I just want to let you know. Yeah, okay, we got one no, right? So Haley's like, yeah, but he's like, what? Of course that would happen, right? So again, it's not the kind of thing that we actually step back and practice, okay? Now, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here. I'm not going to ask you to detail something, but has any of you ever been in an uncomfortable situation before? Like perhaps now? Okay, got some hand raises. Okay. Any uncomfortable situation. Again, I'm not going to ask you to share what, but okay, so some of you have found yourself in an uncomfortable situation. What did you do in that situation when you were uncomfortable? Okay. So get out, I'm not okay, that's not okay to say. All right. So kind of being very forthright about, here's how I feel about this, and I want you to know. What have other folks done in an uncomfortable situation? Yeah. You laugh, right? It kind of happens just a little bit here, right? Now that gets really murky, because if we're doing this whole thing by trial and error with these jokes, and then for some people, their default response, or their uncomfortable response is to laugh. What do I do with that? How do I know whether you think it's funny or you don't think it's funny, right? And so in the absence of actually getting some explicit information from somebody, we may actually be misinterpreting some signals that we're getting. Okay? And so that also brings up the issue of whose responsibility is it, right? So for some folks, like Elena, you're pretty clear about saying, hey, I'm not okay with this, right? But not everybody has that level of assertiveness. And so do we only ask the person who's on the other end of the joke to say something, or do the folks who are about to throw that joke out into the universe have some responsibility for figuring out whether or not this is going to be okay with everybody? Does that make sense for folks? All right, let's do another one. So an employee receives a bad evaluation after she turns down the sexual proposition of her supervisor. Sexual harassment, yes or no? Okay, you're supposed to talk about it. So I'll give you 5 minutes to do that. think? Sexual harassment, yes or no? Yes. Tell us why.
Regardless of that, if you received a bad evaluation, the fact that she was sexually exposed to by her supervisor is not a sticky situation at all.
Okay. So the fact that she was sexually propositioned at all is kind of a sticky matter. Do y'all agree with that? Yeah?
Not just by anyone, but by a direct supervisor.
By a direct supervisor. So that makes a difference. Tell me why that makes a difference.
Mainly because of situations like this where you can't really distinguish bad evaluation from bad evaluation because of some resentment or some other situation.
Okay. So there's a use of power there, right? If I'm your supervisor and I can give you evaluations or hire or fire you or decide whether or not you get to take vacation, well then all of a sudden there's a little bit of a power difference there. Ian?
I actually have a really big issue with this question because it says employee receives bad evaluation after she brings down a sexual conversation. Why is it a she? Why couldn't it be a he?
It could be a he. Could it be a he?
Why couldn't we have to date? I just have an issue with how it's written because it's basically sort of under the table saying it's automatically a girl, which I disagree with. I think it should be gender neutral.
Okay, thank you for your feedback. I appreciate it. I would offer that we're offering a number of different examples, the kind of things that can happen. So, would it make a difference if the proposition was to a male employee? Would it still be a problem? Yeah. Okay. So we know that same-sex, same-gender sexual harassment can also happen, right? But the bigger issue here, as Daniel was talking about and Anthony was talking about, is the power dynamic, right? So the gender doesn't necessarily is not what is informing this. It's the fact that there's a power dynamic that's a problem here, right? Now, does anybody think that maybe this isn't sexual harassment? Maybe they're not sure. Yeah, Alex.
I mean, I don't think it's not. I just think it could be two completely separate things. So the sexual proposition is yes, but the question in itself, I would say no.
Okay, and why would you say no?
She might be a bad employee.
Right. So all you yeses who jumped out of the gate, what if she was a bad employee? Deserve that bad evaluation. What do you think?
Well, I think it's sexual harassment just because there was a sexual thing towards an employee, but I agree with that is that she might have been terrible at her job. Not bad evaluation.
You say that a little bit louder. Well, what did y'all do? Did you assume that that's why she got the bad evaluation? You had not paid it?
No, I think just take the situation as a whole. You really can't tell based on the information given whether or not it was a result of sexual proposition, but it does take on the idea that he's trying to enforce his coercion.
I think an issue I believe that exists here is the fact that when something like this occurs, I feel like it's the employee's right to pursue HR or other entities to seek help and basically kind of put this down in writing. Just so in a case like this, it can be kind of the lines can be drawn a little more clearly to see what actually is happening. And I feel like the fact that whether or not the bad evaluation is because of the sexual proposition, the fact that it could be, the fact that question has been raised, it creates a problem, whether or not it is or not.
So it wasn't too much of a leap, right, for you all to make the assumption that those two things are connected, right? So whether they are or not, we don't actually know, but there's certainly a perception that these two things are connected. And that's why the fact that there's that power dynamic leads to that perception, right? Now, maybe she was bad, she did deserve that evaluation, but we also need to maybe then another piece of information would be why, right? Why did she deserve that evaluation? Was she terrible at her job and had always been terrible at her job? Or was she being sexually harassed and all of a sudden was terrible at her job? Right? And so, again, this is to note that there's lots of other pieces of information that would be helpful, but it's also to note that y'all didn't have much of a problem making a leap between these two things being connected. Okay? Alright, we're by, on the blue sheet of paper, we're going to switch gears for just a second. Everybody have one? On the blue sheet of scrap, we've got some over extra somewhere. We have it in the back. Thank you very much. Okay, what I want you to do is I want you to write down a behavior that you've observed or experienced here at University of Connecticut, particularly in your role at USG. That would be great, but I know some of you are new, so you may not have that experience. That you think either was or contributed to sexual harassment. So an example of something you saw or experienced that either was sexual harassment or you think contributed to sexual harassment. Okay? Write down an example. Things like some folks might be struggling, okay? You're struggling a little bit. I won't ask you to give up the details, but if you've ever been to a party before, there may be some things that you can think about there, right? Julie? Yeah. And when you're done, you can pass them down to the end of the table. And then if I could have the folks who went through this last year, y'all can come on up. Just 4 folks.
I'm not gonna run anybody up.
Oh, come on. Come on, Kara. So close. Hello. tell you my supervisor was going to fire me if I did not sleep with her, would you say that that's sexual harassment? Yes. Okay, we're pretty clear about that, right? We'll get to strongly agree on that. But it's the hostile environment that often becomes a little bit more difficult for folks to understand, right? Because it's all of the stuff that you talked about when we were talking about in the quiz, right? Where did it happen? Did it happen in work or out of work? What relationship did these folks have? How long have they been friends? All of these other, how many times did it happen? Now, there are certain things that need to be in place for it to rise to the level of an actual sexual harassment complaint. But it's important to understand that, again, if you go back to all of those things, that there are ways in which things can be interrupted before we even get to the complaint. Don't forget that that's just part of the equation. All right, there are things that need to be in place for it to rise to the level of an actual complaint, right? And here's what it is. You talked about some of this already. It needs to be unwanted or unwelcome. It needs to be repeated, pervasive, and or severe. And we put those things together because there's some things that in and of themselves are enough to rise to the level of a complaint creating a hostile environment. Now, Brandon, you're over in Buckley, I think? Yeah? Okay. And I've heard, it's been a little while since I went over there, but I've heard that when you walk in around President's Hall, there are pictures of naked people everywhere. That it's like a requirement to have porn on your screensaver on your computers. Is that how it is over there? I don't think so. I didn't think it was right? So I'm assuming that that's not the case, right? If it is, we'll have to have an offline conversation on that. We'll have a lot of work to do then over there, right? But that's what we mean by pervasive, right? That you walk in the environment and there's an expectation that this is how people will interact with each other. Now, it needs to be enough to create an intimidating, hostile, and objectively offensive work environment. And we use what's called the reasonable person standard, which is most folks, given the same set of circumstances, would find the behavior to be offensive. So, Cody, you're my supervisor. And Oscar, you're a colleague. Right? Now, Cody, I walk by Oscar, and now Cody, I come to you and I say, Cody, Oscar drops his pencil on the floor and wants to look at my skirt, sexual harassment. What do you say? Okay. Okay. How many of you think that thank goodness I'm not Cody right now? Right? Anybody want to help him out a little bit here? What would you say? What would you say? Andrew, what'd you say? Right? Okay. Now, I'm going to assume that most of you, when I gave you that set of different things, probably didn't think that what Oscar did was sexual harassment. Is that pretty fair to say? Probably doesn't rise to the reasonable person. But your response to me, particularly if you're a supervisor, right? Cody's response was great because what he said was, I'm going to take it somewhere, right? He didn't say, get out of my office, you have no idea what you're talking about, and I don't want to hear anything else about this, right? Because the reality is, I get Oscar. Right? Anybody want to vouch for Oscar?
Yep.
Yeah? All right, got it. All right, got hands over there. All right. So, but you know what? Joshua was doing stuff like that to me for the past 6 months, and you will never know about that if you shut me down in the conversation, right? So for those of you that are student leaders, right, think about this, that you have some level of authority on this campus. And so if somebody comes to you and shares something with you, and the message that they get from you is, I don't know, not sure I'm really buying that, right? Then the message is, well, I certainly can't talk to anybody else about this. Whereas if the message that you send is, look, I'm not asking you to fire Oscar, right? But what I am asking you to say is, hey, okay, you know what, Michael? Clearly something is going on that's making me feel uncomfortable. I'm not sure what it is, but let's see if we can try to figure it out. Because if it doesn't rise, even if it doesn't rise to the level of a sexual harassment complaint, that's just good managerial practice. If somebody is feeling that uncomfortable in your workplace, don't you want to do something about it?
So are you supposed to automatically assume that they're being honest, or do you need to ask for a witness or something?
You should go by what your policies are. The supervisor is probably not the person who's responsible for investigating whether or not something happened. So that's why I'm not saying that you necessarily have to believe me right off the bat, but you also want to be careful about telling me that you don't believe me because you don't necessarily have the information. So there's usually some sort of office or organization, like here on campus in the community standards in the Office of Diversity and Equity, there's usually somebody outside in HR that is responsible for getting all of that information and doing that investigation. Yeah. Any other questions? understand, remember when I mentioned Title IX before? Well, Title IX says that sexual assault is a form of sexual harassment. And so all the stuff that we've been talking about as it relates to sexual harassment, when we're talking about sexual assault on campus, we have similar obligations. And those obligations include that if somebody comes to us, if a student comes to us and the person that the student reasonably believes could do something about the situation, if a student comes and says something, tells us something, and we don't do anything about it, that's a problem. Okay? And so what we have are you familiar with the sexual violence and relationship misconduct statement? Is it go with anybody? Okay, student leaders on campus, you should be familiar with this because this outlines and defines what sexual assault, what's partner violence, what's stalking, what's sexual harassment. We also give you details about our community response team, which are the folks on campus who are available to provide services to folks who are experiencing any of these things. You should also be familiar with the consent definition, which is in that document. All of our first year students get this information when they come in. This is the new policy that I referenced early on. And January 25th of this year, the Board of Trustees adopted two policies. One is it related to child sexual abuse reporting, which just reiterated what our obligations were. But the second was a new sexual assault reporting policy, which somewhat clarified some of our expectations. And it's important for you all to be able to communicate this information with the other students on campus. Because what it says is that any employee, except the confidential reporting options that I'm going to share with you, any employee who receives a report or a disclosure of sexual assault is obligated to report it to one of three offices: Community Standards, the Office of Diversity and Equity, or the Title IX coordinator. So students need to know that when they tell somebody that we need to share this information with those three offices, one of those three offices. And we don't do that because we want people to be uncomfortable. We do that because if we know something and we don't do anything about it, that's a problem. And so we need to make sure that folks are connected to the resources and that we're trying to remediate the situation as much as possible. The confidential reporting options include counseling and mental health services, as well as the off-campus or the campus advocate and the off-campus sexual assault crisis services. Because we know that sometimes folks don't want to necessarily have a report that comes after this. And so we want to make sure that they're familiar with the confidential options. Any questions about any of that stuff? Okay, so let me just quickly go. I want to go through the report and share some information with you. And then I want to hear from our folks who went through examples, and then I'm going to leave you with a quick video. So this report really reminded us of some stuff that we already knew. We knew how sexual harassment was common on college campuses. Also, anybody here an FYE mentor or anything? Yeah? Okay, so for those of you in the room, the second bullet point is probably important because more than 1/3 of the students who experience sexual harassment experience it within their first year on campus, right? So all this stuff that we're doing in terms of making it a welcoming environment and helping folks through the transition, we need to recognize that for a number of them, this is part of that transition. It showed us that men and women are equally likely to be harassed, but both men and women were more likely to be harassed by men. Men and women were equally likely to be harassed, but it also showed up in different ways. So for the women, it tended to be more like the catcalling and the objectifying kind of stuff, whereas for the men, it tended to be more homophobic in nature. LGBT, lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender students were more likely to be harassed, and that would also then impact their worry about actually graduating or finding a job afterwards. In terms of racial identity, Black and Hispanic students experience sexual harassment in different ways than white students, because white students tend to be, again, more of the homophobic stuff, whereas for the Black and Latino students, it tends to be more around the kind of sexual nature stuff. But this is the thing that was really important from this study, because what it did is it told us that sexual harassment wasn't about like, oh, Alan, he's just a little awkward, but he really likes you, right? Like, give the dude a break. It was more about using this to make people uncomfortable with humor, right? And so if we go back to that thing that we all do when we're uncomfortable, which is that laughing thing, then if more than half of the folks are doing this because they think the biggest reason that they give for not reporting it is that they just didn't think it was a big enough deal to report, right? And that wasn't because it didn't have an impact on them, but it was because I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to be that person who, everybody else seems to be getting along fine. I don't want to be the one who's messing up the sandbox play for everybody. Okay? All right. So my returning folks, come on up. Okay. So now you had the pleasure of going through all of the examples of stuff that people said, right? That they had experienced or witnessed on campus. So did you notice any themes or anything?
We all
A lot of them? What's that?
Yeah. We each have one.
Okay, so what do you got? One second.
First thing that I saw was that I've been able to run bus laps, where I know how to go on sports, but there's that essential.
Okay, what else?
I had used video and pictures.
Oh, that happens on our campus? Really?
I had a very large pile of maybe rude jokes, derogatory jokes towards women, and just generally sexually inappropriate jokes.
When we say big pile, we just want to kind of keep it, right? About 50 of you in the room. Ooh, you look like you've got a big pile too.
Yes, I had undesired touching.
Wow. So our big piles are undesired touching and rude jokes. And was it rude and sexual jokes?
Rude sexual jokes and derogatory jokes towards women.
And derogatory jokes towards women. Wow.
I had denial that sexual harassment exists.
Oh, interesting.
I have two. The first one was involving alcohol, so people being forced to do things that they don't necessarily want to because they're intoxicated, and at parties, the way that girls are supposed to dress.
So these came from you all, right? So this is stuff that, was this a surprise to any of you all when you read through them?
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately not, right? Isn't that such an interesting point, right? That the fact that it's actually not that surprising for us, right? And so what does that mean? What does that mean for us that that's not all that surprising? That we are so used to this, that it's become so normalized for us, that it's sometimes hard to even see it, right? Thank you all, you're awesome. So what I want you to do, I'm going to show you a quick video, and I want you to think a little bit about the messages that are being communicated in this video, and then to think a little bit about how that might have an impact on all of us.
Crystal Lake. It's almost bikini season. Bikini season, really. We live in Chicago. We work 60 hours a week, catching the red-eye back as soon as this conference is over. And when are we ever going to find ourselves sitting on a beach?
I need someone to help me find some fresh water.
I can have you back.
You're gonna get wet.
I'm gonna get wet. Here. Crystal Light. 5 calories, 0 guilt. Because you never know.
Okay. How many of you have seen that commercial before? Anybody? Yeah. Okay. So what are some of the messages in that commercial?
I think what everybody needs to remember before they start attacking it is that it's a commercial. Advertisers know that sex sells. If they just made a very appropriate commercial, it wouldn't stick in your mind. It wouldn't make you think. It wouldn't make you want to go out and buy that product. Yes, it is playing on a lot of stereotypes. That's the blonde, the yes, I want to go get wet, the hot guy who can get water. Yes, it plays on all those stereotypes. That's blatantly just good advertising. If they did it any other way, it wouldn't be nearly as snappy. It wouldn't be funny. It would be boring.
Okay, so first of all, we're making some assumptions about whether or not we're going to start trashing the commercial, right? So we need to make sure that we give people an opportunity to say whatever it is that they want to say about this. But you talked about how you feel like there's some stereotype stuff that's in there, but it sells, right? Can you have a commercial that uses any sort of non-stereotypical commercial and a comedy and have it be
does completely inappropriate commercial.
Tell us
I
why.
would say the opposite of what you just said.
Talk about why.
You by no means need to make a woman feel bad to sell your product. And the fact that people think that's okay and a good way to make money is kind of disrespectful.
What do you think about that? Yeah.
I think it's the decision of the consumer. If they find the commercial offensive, they don't have to buy it, you can boycott it. I know there was a Nike ad like 10 years ago that had a woman out running like an axe murderer with her Nike shoes on, and that got lost flat. And lost Nike some sales. So something like that, if you don't like it, don't buy the Crystal Light, drink something else. And, you know, they're not trying to necessarily offend you, they're just trying to be funny. And I don't know your name over there, but using sex to sell does work to some extent.
Okay. What do you think about that? You think sex sells? You know, just don't buy it then. So this doesn't. So as long as you just don't buy it, then it doesn't really have any impact on you. These messages don't have any impact on you.
I think in that situation, just not buying it doesn't really do anything. So you yourself say, okay, I'm not going to subscribe to this because it's sexual harassment. But it doesn't really change anything. It's just you don't subscribe to it. I think it's better if you become more active and like trying to prevent it from that.
I think, well, with that commercial, I think it's trying to be absurd in what it was showing. It was a plane crash and they ended up on a beach. If you're going to be upset about how it's objectifying women or if it's doing this, that, or the other thing, people who are upset about plane crashes could flip out about something like that. There's so many things that you could get upset about, and I think that commercial was meant to be absurd and be funny and snappy and play on stereotypes. And I don't think it is that big of a deal that it should make women feel bad or feel like they're being objectified.
So, I'm not sure if anyone got the memo or not, but if you just always spit out these kind of commercials and you kind of create a culture around it, you kind of create a culture and it kind of becomes everything around it. So, yes, it is affecting your whole life. A small little commercial. It does play into it. We can't just turn a blind eye to it and say, oh, it's going to go away. Please don't stop. I'll let you do something like you all said, but I don't know.
I have gotten that memo, and
I'm happy you did. I was wondering.
I just think it's interesting because it like people really focus on how it looks at the women's standpoint, but at the same time, the guy would be objectified.
Right. Right.
So, like, I'm not saying
Would that have been as funny if some scrawny little dude was the one who was showing up on the beach and like she was been all like, oh, I'm gonna get wet, I'm gonna get wet? Would that have had the same impact? Probably not, right? Karen and Helen?
I personally came from the perspective when you said that it wasn't a big deal, and we talked about before where they didn't, they thought it wasn't a big deal, just because someone might think it's not a big deal, really speaks to how ingrained it is in our culture that we should be objectifying our bodies, and we should be objectifying other people. I understand it's commercial, I understand it's a little thing, but that little thing speaks to how ingrained it is within our mentality and how we think about things in today's society.
So y'all got some messages from this, right? And so it's important to understand that, yeah, this is commercial, in and of itself, probably no big deal, right? But the reality is that it does send a message. And in the conversation about that message, some people got to say what they thought other people should think about this. And then other people had to respond to that. So I ask you to, in terms of leaving me with what will you do, as a group, as an organization, who gets to speak on your behalf about whether or not somebody should be offended by this or not, or whether you should just sort of take it as a grain of salt? Who's involved in that conversation? Who sets those rules, right? Like sort of those unwritten rules? And how you invite people in that conversation. Because it seems like we had some pretty disparate kinds of responses to this, and from the spectrum of like, oh, no big deal, just don't buy the stuff, to that's really offensive to me. And that's really offensive in a way that there's lots of little stuff that contributes to feeling like things are offensive, right? And so how are you really authentically engaging with each other in those conversations
commercials are about making you want to be somebody or someone that connect with makes you want to be like, oh, I can be that guy or I can be that girl, and I should buy this product. So that being said, I guess they weren't trying to make women feel bad about what they were seeing, or men feel bad about what they were seeing. But I think it was more of a mistake on their part. They didn't really evaluate what they were creating.
I don't know what they were trying to do.
No, but that being said, I doubt they were. I doubt. I think, as far as I can tell, as far as advertisements go, I'm pretty sure they are designed to sell products, not to belittle any particular people.
Right, but the techniques that they use to sell the products is part of what we need to critically analyze.
Okay.
And the fact that one of the techniques is about playing off the stereotypes that say women, no matter what they're doing, they can be working 60 hours a week, and the least likely thing can happen, which is a plane crash that puts them down on an island with a hot guy. And so it's a good thing that you worried about Crystal Light, because the thing that's probably the least likely thing could happen. And you know what? And you're also going to find that really hot dude on the beach who's going to be there to help you out. So the fact that the technique is playing on those stereotypes means that they think you all buy that, otherwise they wouldn't do it. It only works if you buy into it.
I feel like 99% of advertising uses maybe not as blatant stereotypes, but it's all about making you feel like you want to be that person, that girl, that guy. And I feel
How
like
many of the women in the room want to be in a plane crash?
I'm not talking about specific ones, but in general, I feel like.
And we could probably get into a larger debate about, and we have to wrap it up. So we could probably get into a larger debate about advertising and marketing. The point of this activity is to think about, when we read all of those examples, right, this is all stuff that you had come up with that had happened in here at the University of Connecticut. And we talked about how so normal it was that we weren't surprised about it, right? So this is just an example of the ways in which we oftentimes don't even think about this, right? We don't even think about the fact that some of those messages were in that commercial. We watch the commercial, we laugh at it, and at the end of the day, we go on. But those things can pile up in terms of sending us messages about, well, do women belong in the workplace? Do they not belong in the workplace? Where do men? What kind of men? All of those things that we don't critically think about. That's all I'm asking you to do, is to critically think about it, and more importantly, to think about how you're creating those norms in your environment, right? Because I think the more important thing is not that commercial, it's the conversation that you all were having about the commercial. Because y'all were all over the board on it, right? And so how do you have those conversations where you're all over the board? And who gets to sort of set the tone for those conversations, or put out into the universe who's supposed to be thinking what? That's all I'm asking you to think about. Especially because so many of you are new, how are you going to develop those communication norms with each other so that everybody's voice is valued and that you're seeing perspectives that may be new for you, right? Because that's not your experience. Does that make sense for folks? Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for your indulgence. Center anytime. Well, that's next week.
This microphone is not doing me any favors. Can you guys hear me fine? Yeah. Can the people in the back hear me okay? No? Is that okay? Okay. All right. I'll fix this. Okay. we sworn the new senators, we had our sexual harassment training. Next we move into election of the sergeant at arms. This is an open nomination, so, if there are any nominations, in the assembly right now, you can be recognized and you can nominate. Are there any nominations for the sergeant at arms? Sure, Phil, or Senator Jones? Ian Schofield has been nominated. Are there any other nominations for the sergeant at arms? Senator Violet?
I nominate her.
Chair Duggan? Senator Chen?
I nominate Neil.
You nominate Neil Modi. Okay, so I should probably, hold on one second. Senator Duggan, you,
I nominate Violet.
oh, all right. Okay, now I should definitely be writing this down. Hold on one second, guys. Yeah, okay. Can someone second all of those nominations, please? Second. Thank you. You can second. Hakeem? Thank you. All right, so this is usually there's somebody managing the speakers list. So we had Senator Schofield of CLAS, Senator Violet of Engineering. We had Senator Dugans of CLAS. We had Senator Modi of North. I'm sorry, did I miss any other nominations? No? Okay, are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations for the position of Sergeant at Arms? Okay, all right, so will the nominees please rise? Do the nominees accept the nomination to the position? Senator Dugans has respectfully declined her nomination. Do the rest of the nominees accept? Okay. So next, we'll move into having the people who nominated the nominees speak on behalf of the candidate for why they believe that candidate would be a good position, good person for that position. We'll start with Senator Jones speaking on behalf of Senator Schofield.
Ian's done model you for the last 3 years.
Can everyone just use microphone because it's recorded and so we won't be able to hear you if you don't use the microphone.
Ian has been part of model unit for the past 3 years. He has extensive knowledge of a complicated organization that functions in a formal manner. I also know Ian personally. I know he can be forceful, he can apply rules when he needs to. And I believe his experience and also his position as a senior would put him in good standing to be Sergeant at Arms.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Jones. Next, I'd like to call up Senator Rubin to speak on behalf of Senator Violet.
No, but what do you mean?
What's going?
I nominated Senator Violet for the position of Sergeant at Arms because I know him personally as a friend as well as a senator. And while he is new to USG for this semester, in the spring, his dedication and learning ability really speaks through his actions. And while I cannot speak for his knowledge of the rules, of Robert's rules at the moment, I know that if elected, he will study them ceaselessly until he has them inside and out, and he will not hesitate to enforce them, which is needed in USG.
Thank you, Senator Stevens. Senator Chen, speaking on behalf of Senator Modi.
Hi guys. For the time being that I've known Neo, he's been a great friend and a great classmate. He is very responsible. He is passionate about his work. He's dedicated to his work, and he is the most responsible guy I know. And I know that if he is to be elected, he will be the best servant of ours.
Next, I'd like to call up the nominees themselves to speak on their behalf, on their own behalf, rather. Senator Schofield.
As Senator Jones mentioned, I have been in Model UN for the past 3 years. This coming year, I'm actually going to be the Director of Security Council, so I do have a very, very working knowledge of Robert's rules and how they should be applied to a working body. We have different opinions coming into play, different questions we have on private question voting, things like that. I do have experience in doing that. As also was mentioned, I'm a senior, so I sort of know what's going on. I have an idea of what's going on. I'm here to help people if they have any questions. That also being said, I have a great respect for USG and what it does at this university. So if people aren't being respectful in this meeting, I will not be afraid to call them out and make sure that they are paying attention. They are representing their constituents and the students of this university as they've been elected to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Schofield. Next, I'd like to call up Senator Violet to speak on his behalf.
Good evening, everyone. So I would like to speak on my behalf on why I feel I am a good candidate for the position of Sergeant at Arms. Now, when I was first elected last year, we were invited to the last Senate meeting of the spring semester. And in that Senate meeting, it did not go as well as I feel many people thought it could have. There were voices were raised, people were very upset. Multiple people mentioned that they were very embarrassed about how the Senate handled themselves at that meeting. And I personally felt it was a little affronting because we had all these new senators. No, I'm not pointing fingers, but everyone, there was all these new senators, and they were all very able to be molded by the situation. And personally, I would hate to see that ever happen again. The reason I'm running this position is I would really like to make sure that as a whole we can respect each other and work well together to represent the student body very well. I do have leadership experience. At high school, I was the senior patrol leader of my troop, and I am now an Eagle Scout. Through school, I've been involved in Honors Council, and I was a committee chair there, so I do have leadership experience. While my knowledge of Robert's rules might not be as good as some of the other senators here, I would like to mention that this position requires you to know Robert's rules in and out, and I will not hesitate personally to try to do it. I feel that everyone who's running for this position will do the same. So, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Violet. Next, I'd like to call the floor Senator Modi to speak on his own behalf.
Hi, everyone. So far, I've held many leadership positions on campus, and whenever I take on any of these positions, I make sure that I'm passionate about what I do, and I make sure that I know everything I have to do in and out before I run for these positions. And even in my schoolwork, I've always been very meticulous and try to make sure that I know everything in and out before I start something. And if I were elected to be Sergeant at Arms, I would make sure that I would tirelessly know all of Robert's rules. And being on the Senate means that everyone has to work together. And being Sergeant at Arms would mean that I would have to conduct everybody and make sure that we all respect each other and know all the rules.
Thank you, Senator Modi. Are there any questions for the nominees? Sure, Senator Rifkin.
I'm just wondering about the grade level. Can you please use the microphone, or you can use that one?
The standing mics, yeah, fine.
I was just wondering if we can know the grade level of each nominee.
Sure. Yeah, we can start with Senator Schofield.
I am a senior this semester.
I'm a junior this semester.
Senator Modi.
I'm a sophomore.
Great, thank you. Are there any other questions on the floor? Seeing none, we move into debate. Is there anyone who would like to be recognized for debate? Vice President Patel.
I'm not here to support any specific candidates. I just want to make a general comment. I was in USG last year and I was speaker, and I started my year just being a senator, and then shortly I was appointed deputy speaker, and I have no knowledge of anything within USG. I'm like, oh, well, I'm ambitious. I'll just apply and we'll see what happens. And I think since so many of you are new and you don't know much about USG, how it works, not don't think that you can't do something just because you are not trained in Robert's rules or you kind of didn't do it. I think we overestimate experience in USG sometimes, and I think ambition is more important sometimes than experience. So just keep that in mind when you vote. And also the fact that we have 3 candidates running for Sergeant at Arms it makes me really happy that in 1 year we have changed this much, because I think we have elections 2 times since I was elected into USG, and every time we have 1 candidate who runs and they just win, and just the fact that people want to get involved, they want to do something from USG, really makes me happy. Since this is my last year and I'll be leaving and graduating, it makes me proud that my time has been successful within USG. So thank you so much, and I hope you make the right decision.
Is there any other debate on the Senate floor? Would you like to be recognized, Senator Jim? Okay. I would just like to make sure for our new senators who may not know what this debate portion is about. This debate portion is really your chance to advocate for any of the candidates that you feel strongly about. So is there any debate? All right, seeing none, we move into a vote. I'm sorry, did I miss somebody? No? Okay. Seeing none, hold on one second. All those in favor of electing Senator Schofield, to the position of Sergeant at Arms for the academic year of 2012 to 2013, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Yeah. We'll do it by standing vote. So all those in favor of electing Senator Schofield to the position of Sergeant at Arms for the academic year of 2012 to 2013, please signify by rising. Can anyone else confirm the count that I have up there? I have 14. You have 14? All right, please be seated. All those in favor of electing Senator Violet to the position of Sergeant at Arms for the academic year 2012 to 2013, please signify by rising. This is Violet. All right. All those in favor of electing Senator Mosley to the position of Sergeant at Arms for the academic year of 2012 to 2013, please signify by rising. Thank you. So we have a tie.
I think that was 4 votes.
Sorry?
It was 4.
It was 4? I'm sorry. The speaker cast the tie-breaking vote when you do that. The speaker.
So what happens when there's a tie in this, in Senate is the speaker casts a tie-breaking vote. I personally don't feel as though, that's good. So if there are no objections, I'd like to, move back into questions for the nominees, this time considering Senator Violet and Senator Schofield alone, and then, we can move through the elections, as well, if there is no objection, so.
Mr. Speaker, if there are no objections, we ask if any of the nominees would like to take their name out for the consideration first before we move into any further debate.
Sure, that's fine. Are there any other, do any of the nominees wish to drop out of the race? That would be Senator Schofield? Yes or no? No? Senator Violet? Senator Modi? Yes? All right. Okay, so if there are no further objections, can we move back into questions? Does anyone object with what I presented? Okay, great. So we'll move back into questions for the nominees. Are there any questions for the nominees? At this time, we are considering Senator Schofield and Senator Violet for the position of Sergeant at Arms. Are there any questions? No. Okay, seeing none. Is there any debate on the Senate floor? Sure, Senator Alvarez.
All right, I'd just like to say, as a freshman who is new to this whole experience and doesn't know that much about USG, I personally would prefer to learn from and be guided by, to some degree, Senator Schofield because of his age, because of his experience, and I think for everyone we have seen in the past few minutes even, that he demands a great deal of respect for the USG and for all of its members, and so I would ask that people would nominate or vote for him because I just think he would be the best person for the job, even though both are absolutely phenomenal. Thank you.
Senator Inez, I'm sorry. Thank you, Senator Alvarez.
Hi guys, I would just like to speak on behalf of Senator Schofield. As having been served on Model United Nations, I have seen him in action in terms of knowing parliamentary procedure, knowing Robert's rules, and he has directed many times when I've been on the stage floor and I've seen this vouch on his behalf say that he knows Robert's rules and he's like forwarding it back with me ups and downs. So you guys definitely take into consideration with that. And also because Senator JLS is a sophomore this year, or junior, sorry. He doesn't have the opportunity to do this again next year. This is Senator Schofield's last year, so he's getting a chance to become more involved in the USG level.
Thank you, Senator Inez. Senator Manfredi?
I would like to speak on behalf of Senator Schofield. I think his composure, quick wit, and ability to think on his feet is very important for this position, as he's going to have to make quick judgment calls that he has a lot of position on.
Thank you, Senator Manfredi. Senator Rana?
I would like to speak on behalf of Senator Violet. In the past few weeks that we have had interactions, I've been able to tell that he's very charismatic, very leadership oriented, and one thing that really struck me is that upon coming to this platform to speak for his own endorsement, he spoke about how last semester's or the first Senate that we were elected affected him, which shows that he has a personal investment on making sure that this Senate runs with respect, with integrity. And I think that's something that should be taken into account more than just longevity in USG or experience in USG. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Rana. Is there any other debate? Seeing none, we move into a vote. We're going to vote again by standing vote.
All those in favor of electing Senator Schofield for the position of Sergeant at Arms for the academic year 2012 to 2013, please signify by rising. Thank you. All those in favor of electing Senator Violet to the position of Sergeant at Arms for the academic year 2012 to 2013, please signify by rising. Hold on, 1 second, guys, sorry.
Yeah, 19.
I got 19.
You got what?
I got 19.
You got 19?
Yeah.
I keep getting.
He's not counting somebody. I'm sorry?
I got 19.
You got 19? Thank you. Thank you all. Oh, I see over here. Thank you all. Senator Violet, you have been elected to the position of Sergeant at Arms for the academic year 2012 and 2013. Congratulations. And thank you to all the nominees. Next, we move into approval of the minutes from September 5th, 2012. Are there any questions? Seeing none, is there any debate? Seeing none, we move into a vote. All those in favor of approving the minutes from September 5th, 2012, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Abstentions. Carried passes. Who abstained? Oh, Schofield did? Yeah. We had 2 abstentions. It so thoroughly passes. Next, we move into reports of the executive. President Peckus.
Hello, everyone. I've got a long one today. I apologize. So, we start off talking about some stuff that I've done over the past 2 weeks. This stuff is fairly early on in the process, so no kind of decisions or big changes have been made. But spoke with Dennis Pierce a few Fridays ago. We had a nice conversation about McMahon Downhill. That would be a continuing conversation about the vegetarian options and the health and safety over there. In addition, we talked about the flight passes and points, and I think that there's some significant movement on that right now. So hopefully I'll have more exciting news for you next Senate, but I think we're working for a solution there. I met with Police Chief Barbara O'Connor this past Monday. It was a very, very nice conversation. She let me in onto a lot of things that the police department is working on, which includes bringing in a security consultant to take a look at the residential halls and just our general public safety across campus. In addition, we talked about the new ban of being carried for residents, or for guests per resident. She clarified to me that was put in place by the ownership of the apartment complex. They are contracting with state police on private time to help enforce that. So a lot of my concerns about any kind of strained partnership between university police, state police, and apartment complex owners was kind of eased by that conversation. In addition, we've been talking to John Saddlemeyer about spring weekend. I'm sure you've noticed the amount of spring weekend advocacy coming out of administration this year is unusually high. Still trying to figure out exactly why they want to talk about it, but we're going to continue talking to them and trying to figure out solutions so we can have a better experience this year. Beyond that, a bunch of boring stuff. I can let you know if you want to come talk to me personally, but I don't want to waste your time up here. So I do have a couple important nominations I want to make tonight. Before that, I'm going to mention something else. I'll send out an email about this with the specific positions, but as president, I get to make nominations to University Senate subcommittees. So University Senate is a grouping of faculty, administration, different agencies on campus, and 5 undergraduate student representatives. That kind of serves as the governing body for the university, kind of like USG at the next level. They have standing subcommittees, much like we have our own subcommittees. And these committees are extremely important. Very rarely does a student have an opportunity to serve on one of these committees. It's an honor, really, and it's some of the most important work that you can do while you're here. So, fortunately, I have the power to nominate 2 people to most of these subcommittees. I've made a bunch of nominations already, but there are some spots that are still open. These spots include Curricula and Courses Committee, Diversity Committee, the Enrollment Committee, Faculty Standards Committee, Scholastic Standards Committee, and the Building Names Committee. So I'll send out an email with the exact vacancies I have open and the descriptions of the committees, but I'd really like to fill these by the time we meet for the next caucus. So this is really a great opportunity to bump your leadership to the next level. For a lot of you freshmen who sent me letters for constitutional review, I think this would be a good opportunity for you guys. For some of our more veteran members, we really want to test out and see if you've learned anything in USG and work on administration in that venue. So I'm going to be accepting letters of intent for those committees until the end of this week. And when I say letters of intent, not as much as you would have written for constitutional review, just a short paragraph, let me know why you're interested, and then we'll check you out to see if you fit. So I'll send out an email. Don't worry right now about trying to remember what I just said, but keep that in the back of your mind. And also, I want to say this separately. I have one more spot open on the University Senate. So University Senate is the main body, much like USG is to our subcommittee. The other 4 seats, just so you have an idea of what kind of people sit on this, are held by myself, Vice President Patel, External Affairs Chair Daniels, and Membership Coordinator D'Angelo. So it's a fairly influential committee. We tend to put some of our most experienced members on there. But I made a decision this year that I wanted to hold 1 seat over unusually long so we could get somebody new in there. Somebody that's not necessarily on exec or have as much experience. So that is an incredible opportunity that has never been available before. So if you're interested in serving on University Senate, keep that in the back of your mind as well, because I'm really looking for somebody that is looking to make a difference here for that. Okay, that's enough of that. So now I'm going to move on to my nominations. First of all, I would like to nominate Ms. Tori Smith to serve as one of our ex-officio senators this year. I know that you've been coming anyways, but I figured I'd make it official. I'm not sure, does that need to be confirmed?
So, would you like to make them all together?
Nope, just for tonight.
Just for?
Yeah.
Okay. Does the nominee accept the nomination? Sorry. Does the nominee accept the nomination? Okay. Are there any questions for the nominee? Seeing none, is there any debate? Seeing none, all those in favor of not confirming President Peckus' nomination for, I'm sorry, what was your name? Corey Smith. Corey Smith as an ex officio member of the Senate of USG for the academic year 2012 to 2013, please signify by saying aye. All opposed signify by saying nay. Any abstentions? Carried, passes.
Thank you all for that. For those of you who don't know Corey, she represents the Club Sports Council. She's been here for a couple of years now, and I think she has the best attendance out of anybody. We actually looked at it, so good choice in proving that. Second of all, I'd like to make 2 important nominations for the Constitutional Review Committees. I promised you that I would do this. And before I do, I just want to let you know that all the letters I received, I did read, even if they were sent to me like an hour ago. See, just joking, but I did read it. And I considered everybody. It was all extremely impressive. It was a tough decision, but I have made my decision. So I've written up the executive orders forming the committees, and I'd like to appoint the chair of the Constitutional Review Committee for the General Body of the Constitution, Mr. Daniel Massaro, who serves as vice chair of Student Affairs Committee. So that's that. He was a senator last year. He ran for vice president. He's been involved in this organization for a year now, a little more than a year, and I think he'd be great for it. So.
President Peckus, will you be accepting the nomination on his behalf and answering questions on his behalf?
Absolutely.
So does the nominee accept his nomination?
Yes.
Are there any questions for the nominee? President Peckus will answer those questions. Seeing none, is there any debate? Seeing none, we move into a vote on the nomination of Daniel Massaro as chair of President Peckus's ad hoc committee. President Peckus, will you just say the name of the ad hoc committee, please?
Yep, it's the Constitutional Review Committee.
So all those in favor of confirming Senator Massaro as chair of said committee, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed signify by saying nay. Any abstentions? Carried passes.
Okay, and just so you know, we're going to be appointing members to that committee over the next 2 weeks. So he will be accepting letters of intent at his email, which I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, is daniel.2.massaro@uconn.edu. So I guess he's the second Daniel Massaro here. So for the next 2 weeks, that's the email address that you would send it to. He's going to be handling all the nominations for membership, and that'll be announced at the next meeting, and then they'll start meeting after that. Second, I apologize for how long I'm talking here. I know it's not. I would like to nominate for our membership committee that's going to be taking a look at the Constitution and the membership of the Senate and where we're representing from and all that. I'd like to nominate Senator Kara Dugan.
Does the nominee accept the nomination? Are there any questions for the nominee? Any debate? Seeing none, we move into a vote to confirm Senator Dugan's nomination to chair of President Peckus. Can you please say the name of the ad hoc committee?
Yes, it is the membership review committee.
So we move into a vote of confirming Senator Dugan's nomination to said committee. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Thoroughly passes. So used to calling him Steve.
Congratulations, Gary. You're going to do a good job. All right, so that's it for me. Thanks for sticking through it, and thanks for sticking through sexual harassment training. I'm proud of all you guys and the way you engage in the conversation. So, good work as always.
Are there any questions for the president? All right, thank you, President Peckus. Next, we move into the report of the Vice President. Vice President Patel.
I have a couple of things. First, something that I'm doing, I'm going to be helping, I think Chief of Staff, not he's going to be talking about this event more, but I'll be helping him with an event we call Life Raft Debate, and he'll talk more about that. But I'm working on that. I'm also writing up an event description for the orientation, because this is the first time we had such a big turnout, and it was really successful. So what I'm going to, if you have any suggestions as to how we could improve the orientation, trying like splitting up into 2 days, or like something that you like, something you didn't like, I would really appreciate if you could send me an email saying, I really like this, I think you should change this, so we could write it up, and the next person who finds it next year could know what worked and what didn't work. Also, I'm going to be meeting with deans of each of the schools, or even associate deans, depending on their schedules, with chairperson times, and talking about academics generally, and specifically the general education requirements at the university. And if you're interested in that, especially if you sit on academic affairs committee and you want to come with us and meet with them, we'd be really happy to take you along with us and just explore and just learn about what's going on at the university. So that'd be a really good experience for all of you. Also, I attended the town university relations committee that deals with things like spring weekend, I guess any drinking culture on campus, any events that are being hosted by the university and the town of Mansfield, like the Festival on the Green, and Chairperson Daniel could talk more about that. And so that committee kind of, they don't really plan it, but that's where they talk about the events and stuff like that. So if you're interested in the relationship between the town and university, I think I'm not sure when the next meeting is, but if you're interested, I can let you know. And it's really cool because you get to meet the mayor of Mansfield, town manager, director of UConn Co-op, I think director of transportation. So they're really high position individuals who sit on that committee. So you can ask specific questions regarding the university. So just let me know if you're interested in any of that, and I'll be happy to give you more information and take you along with me. And at last, I'm working with membership coordinator Rebecca D'Angelo on mentoring program. So we'll talk more about that, I think, later on today. So I'm working on with a bunch of people, and I don't want to take up the little description of the thing. So if you guys have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Any questions? Are there any questions for the Vice President? All right, thank you, Vice President Patel. Next, we move into report of the Comptroller. Comptroller Cochin.
All right. I'll be quick, so I'll be taking up a lot of your time a little later. First, I'd just like to let everybody know that I'm still accepting letters of intent for my deputy position. I'm not sure if you guys got that message, but I'm going to say that tomorrow at 5 o'clock, I'm going to start going through letters. So you have until then if you are interested. Also, if you guys notice on the agenda, the FOP is not up there. There are some more changes that are going to be made to that. Some things that are brought to my attention, so we will deal with that first thing in October. Some good news for you guys. I got the report on the actual enrollment at UConn for this semester, and it's higher than we expected. So we're going to have a little more revenue coming in than anticipated. Good for everything. I'll let you know where that's going as that comes in. Just to let you guys know what I'm doing and what you can get involved in, we'll be talking a lot about funding policy later on today. Anyone who wants to help in any way with that, touch with me. We have plenty of things for you to do. And if you get caught around the office doing nothing, I'll probably make you do something anyway. So just let me know. Second, my other project is going to be working with the foundation. You guys heard Herbst mention earlier that the new recreation facility is on their agenda. We're looking to do some things to try and get the foundation motivated to help with that project and fundraising. That is something I'd like to start up. I've been in touch with the foundation, but if I could have someone else with me to kind of push them and be in touch more often than I can be, that'd be great. So I'll keep you posted on where that's going, and we'll move on to the next report. Thank you, guys.
Are there any questions for the Comptroller? Vice President Patel has a question.
I know we passed our budget last Senate, right?
Yeah.
And we had, I think we had $30,000 in our reserve, on reserve for guard dogs and that program, right?
Rainy day fund, yes.
Okay. So are you planning on starting to come up with a plan for that money, specifically for the guard dog plan? Can you just speak a bit, or for next year, or something this year?
As far as that rainy day fund goes, that $40,000 that's currently there is specifically our rainy day fund. So if like the office floods, that's what we use that money for. Any excess revenue is going to go into a separate line item for savings for things such as a van or a new funding system or server transition, something like that.
Okay, so
Vice President Patel, before you continue, can you please turn on the microphone? Thank you.
Sorry. So we haven't made that distinction yet. Like, I guess we're saving up generally until X
Correct.
amount.
As of right now, there's no money to save, so there's no reason to distinguish that. But I'm expecting that there will.
Okay, thanks.
Problem.
Sayana.
As you said, with the enrollment, there's a higher, more money, right? So in regards to that,
Was Senate your budget?
Currently, in our current procedure, any excess revenue goes into the executive budget. I am, one of the changes that will be in the new financial operating procedures gives me the power to put that where it's needed, in savings. But part of that is that you guys will be notified of any reinforcement that happens through excess revenue, and you'll have an opportunity to change that if you're going to notice it.
Are there any questions for any other questions for the comptroller? Thank you, Comptroller Cochran. Next, we move to the report of the Chief of Staff. Chief of Staff Nafi.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the new senators. I'll just keep this brief and short. Right now, we're working on some position descriptions for senior staff members so that it can become a little more cohesive so we can better help the executive committee and all of you guys in turn. So we'll be working on that for the next couple of weeks. Our event planner will also be now looking to starting up some community service initiatives for all of us, so look out for that. In the past, we've done campus cleanups, and that was one of the most successful things and that we've done here over the past couple of years. As Vice President Patel mentioned before, Lifetrack debate is no longer with actors this year. It's going to be with senior staff. We'll be dealing with that, doing all the planning. We'll have help from Senator Okay, yeah, we'll be having some help from actors, but most of the planning and strategic work behind the scenes will be done by senior staff there. Just to once again streamline everything, I've gone and created something called the event form. So this event form can be, as you guys might have seen before, $1,000 was allocated to Senate for you guys to hold events like town halls, meetings with your constituents, stuff like that. This can be used by you guys as well, and all the exec members or anyone in USG for any events that you may have coming up. So this is what it looks like. It's just done quickly on Google Docs. I'll be sending out shortly. Contact info, you say what you want, be very specific. It's really about it. You'll be using it in the next 2 weeks. We'll be using it probably for maybe Student Appreciation Day to help out Chairperson Lowe, and we'll do a test run with it for Lifetrack debate and see how it goes.
Are there any questions for Chief of Staff Nafi?
Yeah. I'd like to yield the floor to Mentorship Coordinator D'Angelo to discuss the mentorship program.
Hello.
So, we, Jigish and I, or Vice President Patel and I, sat down and talked about all of you. And we created mentor groups. So I'm going to read off. This is a great reviewing of who your mentors are going to be for this year. Thank you. How do you pronounce your last name? Schofield. Okay, awesome. So on Team Himes, Kayla, can you please stand? Wave to everyone. Smile. All right. So on Chairperson Himes' mentor group, we have Senator Wanneberger, Senator Chow, Senator Cazzola, Senator Rebecki, and Senator Neil Rana. President Texas's group, we have Senator Dugan, Senator Violet, Senator Bosco, and Senator Craddock. Vice President Patel's group, we have Senator Rifkin, Senator Quartz. Brandon, how do you pronounce your last name? Luxcaranagam? Okay. What'd you say? I said Lux is fine. Luxcaranagam. Okay. Senator Lux. And Senator Wiley. Team D'Angelo. Team Dangle. We have Senator Julie Chen, Senator Innes, Senator Ward, and Senator Modi. Chief of Staff Naqvi's group, we have Senator Donnelly, Senator Perez, Senator Krishna, Senator Grant, and Senator Lujan. Speaker Gandhi's group, we have Senator Paul, Senator Clark, Senator McClellan, and Senator Nordmas. Comptroller Corshane's group. Okay? Okay. We have Senator Parthrana, Senator Jones, Senator Enos, and Senator Minetti. Chairperson Daniel's group, we have Senator Ben Smith, Senator Alvarez, Senator McCabe, and Senator Sargent. That's Senator Sargent. Chairperson Giardina's group, we have Senator Kyle Smith, Senator Murphy, Senator Anthony Hirschia. There you go. Senator Hirschia and Senator Shanhari. Say it again. Suttery? Okay, Senator Suttery. And then in Chairperson Lowe's group, we have Senator Gooding, Senator Schofield, Senator Chang, and Senator Command. So, is there anyone whose name I did not call? Does anyone mentor list? What's your name? Allison Murphy. Okay. I'll add you to the. Hi. Okay. Okay. All right. I'll take care of you guys. So mentor groups will be meeting very, very briefly after Senate. So you should all know who your mentors are right now. And so after we adjourn, you guys can just find a little corner of the room to sort of talk and figure out when you're going to be meeting. So that's all I have to say. I just want to quickly, can't talk today. Can't remember the word, but President Peckus was talking about sitting on university senate committees, and I really just would encourage all of you to really consider that opportunity. From a membership standpoint, it's an awesome, awesome opportunity. I've sat on Senate committees and on university senate for the past 2 years, and it's the best thing I've ever done while I've been in USG. So do it. It's about like an hour a month, maybe 2 hours a month that you put into sitting on those committees. It's absolutely worth it, and it's a great opportunity to learn how the university works. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Chief of Staff Naqvi, still on the floor. Are there any questions for Chief of Staff Naqvi? Vice President Patel?
I thought you'd be talking about this more in detail, about the light draft debate for members who are new. Can you just explain that really quick?
Light draft debate is an opportunity for different disciplines across campus to represent themselves, typically by deans or professors. Last year, Professor, I don't know if you guys know him, kind of like I said, Professor Brennan Kane from, I think, history. He won the debate. It's been held for the past couple of years. Basically, are given a scenario, and this year, I'm not going to reveal it, but you are given a scenario, you debate between who is the most necessary for survival and what discipline is most important and something like that. We're trying to change it up to maybe a tournament style, like NCAA or something, where there's maybe 6 or 8 professors or disciplines represented from all over the campus. You guys can certainly give your suggestions there, and we'll be happy to take them if you have any contacts. And they battle. We'll probably do 3 rounds, and then there will be a judges panel that is usually made up of students to determine who is the winner and who is the most important for survival or something like that. Please don't take offense if your discipline doesn't win. It's just a good way to engage conversation, debate, and discourse. It's usually a fun event.
Are there any other questions for Chief of Staff Naqvi? Thank you, Chief of Staff Naqvi. Next, we move into the report of the legislature. Me.
I'll make mine quick. You guys got my email yesterday. That long thing, that's kind of like my report. So I don't have much to add to that. I am responsible or charged with nominating a nominations committee. The nominations committee is responsible for vetting candidates for the judiciary and making their recommendations to the Senate. I have collected letters of intent for the nominations committee and have vetted those candidates and made my decision regarding that. So I'd like to proceed with that. President Peckus, you can take over the. All right. So first is Senator Googans. She's extremely good at what she does. And that's why I've also selected her to be the chair of this committee. She did mention that she might not be able to be here for a portion of the Senate, so she has already given me her confirmation and her acceptance of her nomination. And if there are any questions regarding her, I can answer them, or even President Peckus can answer them, because he's nominated her tonight as well. So,
are there any questions for nominee?
Are there any questions? Chairperson Hunt.
Okay, everyone knows that I love her. I'm just wondering, since she's the chair of the membership review committee, is she going to have enough time to do this?
Right. I'll take a crack at it, and then maybe President Peckus can fill you in more about the time commitment that he's looking for. Nominations committee historically has required about a week in the beginning of the semester. The reason why it's going to take a week in the beginning of this semester is just because we have 2 open justice positions on the judiciary. So they will need to convene and they will need to accept letters, and so there's about a week of work that's done there, maybe 2, if they need to meet twice. And then most of the crux of what they do then comes towards the end of the spring semester when they're selecting the judiciary for the academic year 2013 to 2014. So in between there, the nominations committee probably won't be convening as much unless there is a vacancy on the judiciary, in which case they would need to convene and collect letters of intent and vet the candidates for that. So it's my impression that she will be able to do both, but I mean, I can also kick it over. I can yield the floor to President Peckus, and he can talk about the time commitment in his committee.
Yeah, I think the short answer here is yes. She will have time, and I'm not going to go into any more than that.
Are there any other questions? Seeing none, we move into debate. Is there any debate over the nominee? Seeing none, we move into vote. All those in favor of appointing Kara Guggens as the chair of the nominations committee, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Abstentions? Clearly passes.
Thank you. And then normally what would happen would be, as the chair of the committee, she would accept letters of intent for membership on that committee, just as President Peckus' ad hoc committee will do. But because, according to the bylaws, the nominations committee needs to be set up in full, that's chair and membership, by the 3rd Senate of the fall semester. And this is technically the 3rd Senate of the fall semester. April 25th, 2012 had 2 sessions. The first session was the last Senate of the spring semester, and the second session was actually technically the first session of the fall semester. So we were working on sort of like a condensed timeline here, and that's why I also made the selections for, I plan on nominating rather. membership to the rest of the nominations committee as well. So I'd like to do that at this time.
I have a quick question. Is that?
Can you please, everyone, just use the microphone? I know it's kind of stupid, but like the camera is not going to have the audio.
In our first Senate coming back this semester, didn't we have presidential senators from last year able to vote? How is that possible if that was the second Senate of this past year?
So, without getting on a huge tangent, because according to the bylaws, there's some room for interpretation. Their term technically ends in the fall. So fall can mean anything. Fall can either mean the academic semester fall. It can mean the fall as in the season fall, in which case they'd still be here. But it can also mean until what my interpretation of this was that it meant until the next residential senators are elected and sworn in. Until then, the fall senators are still senators and are still allowed to vote. And the other thing about that is that's another thing that we are going to look for, or I shouldn't say we. I think President Peckus, his ad hoc committee is going to look critically at the structure of electing senators at 2 different times, and so on and so forth. But I'll let the chair of that committee discuss that himself or herself.
Are there any?
Does that answer your question?
Are there any other questions? Seeing none, please proceed.
Okay. So I would like to, when I call your name, if you could please rise. Senator Inez. Inez? Like Guinness? I should get that right if I am the Senate. Senator Inez. Senator Neo Rana. Senator Chen. And Senator Clark.
Do the nominees accept? Yes. Are there any questions for the nominees? Any debate? Yep.
Are these nominees allowed to run for position in the spring? Are they?
Seeing none, we will let you vote. All those in favor of appointing the nominees, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Abstentions? Clearly passes.
Thank you, guys. So I feel really good about that committee. Thank you all for expressing interest. And we look to have a productive nominations committee. So that's almost it. I also collected a lot of very, very, very well-written, qualified letters of intent for Deputy Speaker. And it was too quick. We had everybody get oriented on Sunday, express interest by Monday at midnight. It was too fast to interview and responsibly vet the candidates and make a nomination at this Senate. And I'm really sorry about that, but this is the fairest way of doing it. And there are so many people who are so qualified that we're just going to continue interviewing next week, and we're going to nominate 2 weeks from today. That's for the position of Deputy Speaker. The other thing is one of my initiatives, my entire motif for this year is going to be strengthening Senate. That's what I plan to do from when I got elected back in April to now and till my term ends. That's what I want to do. And so I have a couple of, not necessarily projects, but I mean, for lack of a better term, I'm going to use that word, projects for different senators who are interested in reaching out to their constituents and who are interested in taking a leadership role in Senate. And so aside from the position of Deputy Speaker, this is another opportunity for you guys to do that. I'm not going to talk about it today. We're already in our second hour of Senate. So email me, and I'll also be reaching out to you guys as well if you're interested in something like that. Okay? And that's represent@usg.uconn.edu.
Are there any questions for the speaker? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you, guys. move into the report of the Chief Justice.
Good evening, everyone. And to the 20 new senators who we have here tonight, welcome to that which is USG. Very happy to see everyone here. So mazel tov for that, winning your elections. Good job. Okay, so the good thing about the elections process, very smooth in terms of no one did anything in violation of the policies. It was a wonderful thing to see. Of course, that's what we expect in the fall. It's, not presidential elections, that's usually going to be very interesting, so that was great, very smooth. I do apologize, at least on behalf of the judiciary, a little bit delay in terms of notification of people. That actually falls down to part of we are severely understaffed. Originally, we had 4 justices who came in were confirmed in the last nomination committee. They were nominated. One of them stepped out over the summer due to various reasons, and so we only have 3 actually right now, including myself. So, with that being said, I would strongly encourage you guys to go out there, if any friends at all who are interested in USG, try to convince them to apply for it. Wonderful opportunity. We want to be able to pick from the best of econ, so really get as many people as we can to join, or at least apply for it. And in terms of, we have at least 10 seats that still need to be filled. We do have about 11 that are kind of in the air in terms of we had people win the write-in elections, and we had the issue if they're going to take it or not. So we're going to be having special elections. I'll be working with Rebecca, and that's also another thing. You find that you have people that you know, or just get out there and tell people if you're eligible for these positions that have yet to be filled, convince them to do it. Try to dig in there and try to find something for them to latch onto, and really try to, we want to get more people active in our organization. So I guess that's it.
Any questions for the Chief Justice? Thank you, Chief Justice Flores. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Just a little clarification. Potential Justice Lefkowitz, is that one that dropped out with some?
That is correct. She was, Colby Lefkowitz, she was nominated, but not officially confirmed. So,
right now we only have 3.
That is correct. That is correct.
Sorry, are there any other questions for the Chief Justice? Thank you, Chief Justice Flores. Next, we move into reports of the committees. Katie Hines, Chairperson Hines for Affairs.
Hi guys. So in case you were wondering, Affairs is not doing live graphics. I'm not sure if you've heard, but we're not doing it. So senior staff agreed to take it on. Yay, senior staff. They're going to do a great job with that. Also for the external appointments that Steve was talking about for the USG or the University Senate, if you're in my committee and you're confused right now, I know that you guys emailed me, and I will just forward that on to Steve. So, sorry about that miscommunication. And then I think that's it. We're going to be working a lot this week with our fall projects, so I'll let you know next week. And if you are interested in coming to my meeting at all, which I would love to see all your beautiful faces, I won't have cupcakes tomorrow, but maybe the next time. Our meetings are Thursdays at 5, and that's fine.
Are there any questions for the Chairperson? Committee.
Right, 1, 2, 3. I'll let him, okay, just to clarify, if you emailed me after I sent you the list of all the description, and you email me and you wanted a position on one of those committees, I will email Steve, and then you need to send him your letter of intent as well.
Senator Sargent?
Can we just clarify why there was like a transfer of power from taxpayers to the senior staff?
Yes, so in our last meeting, it was the light draft debate was brought up and how it doesn't necessarily fall under taxpayers' jurisdiction necessarily. We kind of all came to the consensus that we aren't the best event planners, so we decided we would talk to either senior staff or SUBOG because we felt that with an event planner and people that could actually handle events, it might go over a little bit better because in the past, the attendance hasn't been so great. The premise of the event hasn't been so great either. So it was just decided in the committee that we wanted to focus a little bit more on, I don't want to say doing work, but focusing more on talking to our constituents and administrators and finding out like what the problems are rather than planning an event that we aren't very good at having.
Are there any other questions for Chairperson Hines?
Really quick, if they want to come with us to Dean's, who should they contact, me or you?
Who should they contact me or you? Contact me if you want to come see the dean. We'll talk about that in our meeting tomorrow too. So if you are already interested, contact me.
Are there any other questions for Chairperson Hines? Thank you, Chairperson Hines. Next, we move into report of external affairs. Chairperson Daniels.
All right, we have been very busy with external affairs right off the bat this year. Many of you know, in an election year such as this one, we are charged with voter registration efforts. And so what I'm doing differently this year is we have a voter FAQ, because in prior years we have done a terrific job of registering new voters, but many of them do not know where to vote, how to get to the polls, etc. Absentee ballot questions and out-of-state questions. So we have compiled a list of all those questions and the answers, and it's up on our USG website. And with the help of Chairman Giordina, we have a shortened URL. So write this down, please. It is s.uconn.edu/votes. s.uconn.edu/votes. And that is also up on our USG front page, usg.uconn.edu. So if you're a new senator, if you're a veteran senator, if you're looking for a way to reach out to your constituents and do something that can help them, if you really want to show that you are involved with USG, if people are asking what it is you do, this is a great opportunity to get off to a good step starting out and say, you know, you're out there, you're helping people register the vote, and you're helping people know how to vote. We have forms, registration forms in our office. They can bring them back to our office. We'll take them to the registrar for them. Any other questions you have about that? I'm happy to hear them. External affairs at usg.uconn.edu. Come see me in the office. We're going to do tables, we're going to do canvassing in the upcoming weeks, get as many people registered as possible, and get that information out there as widely as possible. It's really important that you help me out and get that FAQ out to as many people as you can on this campus, and that'll really help people who want to vote. Second of all, Festival on the Green is this Sunday. If you are on my committee or if you are on exec, you received an email from me about this. We're going to start setting up around 10 in the morning or so. The festival itself runs from noon to 5 p.m. over at E.O. Smith. It is a good opportunity for us to reach out to the people of Mansfield who may or may not have conceptions of us that reflect poorly about UConn students. And it really gives us an opportunity to change some of those perceptions, to go out there and show that we're good neighbors. As Vice President Patel mentioned, we're involved with the Town University Relations Committee. This is a nice chance for us to show them, to show the other people in Mansfield that we're serious about finding this middle ground between what in the past has been this
mistrust on either side of the town or the students of each other, to try and find this middle ground between excessive partying or lockdown, as we had at the spring weekend issue. Other than that, I just want to clarify for some of you who may not have been at orientation, who may not have met me, what it is the committee does. In addition to the voter registration stuff, in addition to that town affairs stuff that I was talking about, the main reason this committee exists, what's going to be our primary focus, the second semester is lobbying up in Hartford, primarily concerning the budget numbers, and that directly affects your tuition as UConn becomes a more respected institution, hires more faculty, makes improvement on campus. The only way to keep it affordable is if the state of Connecticut continues to support us financially. So if you do care, if you want great experience meeting with legislators, important people in our state government, that is what we do. Our committee meetings are Friday at 2 in the afternoon, conference room next to the USG office. If you can't make that time, please talk to me. We'll find out a way you can help. Thanks.
Are there any other questions for Chairperson Daniels? Thank you, Chairperson Daniels. Next, we move into report of the funding board. Chairperson Giardina.
As probably see right now, it is handing out the funding policies that we're going to be looking at today. That will take most of your time. I will be taking up most of your time tonight. So the other thing I want to do report is nominate somebody to the funding board. I'd like to nominate Daniel Massaro.
Does the nominee accept his? Okay. Are there any questions for the nominee? Seeing none, we move into debate. Is there any debate? Seeing none, we move into a vote. All those in favor of confirming the nomination of Daniel Massaro to the funding board, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed signify by saying nay. Abstentions? Clearly passed.
All right, that's our report. Let's see that.
Are there any questions for Chairperson Giardina? Thank you. Next, we move into report of student affairs. Chairperson Lowe.
Did everyone read that? I'll give you a minute. That's my report.
This will also be emailed to them if need be.
If you didn't hear that, he's going to email it to you. You can't read that part. Excuse any spelling. Any questions?
Where's the table for the reviews?
Did you see that huge tent outside? That's where it would be.
The whole tent of t-shirts.
That whole tent is for different tables, and my table will have t-shirts. That's it.
Are there any other questions for Chairperson Lowe?
If you need to find our table, it'll say USG in the front. You'll find it.
Can you just quickly say what you mean by student life as the theme?
Oh, student life by the theme. All that means is it's going to be all encompassing. So we're going to have mental health there. We'll have dining services there. We're going to have the police chief there. Pretty much everyone that holds any high power on campus will be there. You want to be there too.
Are there any other questions for Chairperson Lowe? Thank you. Oh, hold on. Senator Manfredi. Please.
Is this all in the student daily digest, or can you send some emails so we can have all the?
Both. Yeah.
Are there any other questions for the Chairperson? Thank you, Chairperson Lowe. Next, we move into unfinished business. Since there is no unfinished business, we move into new business. On the first order of business is a commendation regarding Jim Calhoun. For that, I'd like to call Chairperson Daniels and President Texas, the authors of the legislation.
Do I move to the table? Yeah. I'd like to move to the table for the next step. Second.
You can't second. Can you?
All right, are there any, I don't even know if you can ask any questions. Are there any questions for the chairperson, for motion? Seeing none, is there any debate? Seeing none, we move into a vote. All those in favor of tabling a commendation recognizing Coach Jim Calhoun to the next Senate, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed signify by saying nay. Abstentions? Carry passes. The commendation is tabled. Next, we move into an act concerning the Senate operating policies and procedures. Hey guys, I'll make this quick because although it seems like crazy stuff, this is everything that I've outlined in orientation already, so most of you already know this information. I can read the act first, but let me just explain what I was trying to do before I actually go ahead and present the act. Basically, if you read the bylaws as they stand, the policies on attendance, decorum, and all of that is very, very, very loose. So all I have done is, in terms of modifying the bylaws, is stipulate that a speaker, the sitting speaker, will present a set of Senate operating policies and procedures, which I copied from Brian Buckman's financial operating policies and procedures that he created years ago, and that Ed, or the comptroller rather, changes, I believe, annually. But Ed is doing this year. So all I pretty much said is that, and I can move into the changes to the bylaws after I read the act, but all it pretty much says is that the presiding speaker of the Senate will propose a set of Senate operating policies and procedures to the Senate after the fall elections every academic year. We'll get to that in a second. Let me first read the act. An act concerning the professionalism policy of the Senate. Whereas the Senate of the Undergraduate Student Government is the representative body of the undergraduate students of the University of Connecticut. Whereas this representative body is in intimate contact with school administrators, facilitators, and other professionals associated with the workings of the University of Connecticut. Whereas it is the responsibility of this body to maintain professionalism on all of the business they conduct. Whereas the Senate, covered by a multitude of media outlets, is a visible representation of the business of the undergraduate student, of the business the undergraduate student government conducts. Be it resolved that the Senate will adhere to the policies outlined in the Senate operating policies and procedures for the duration of the 2012-2013 academic year at the University of Connecticut to protect the decorum of this body. Be it finally resolved that the Senate will modify the bylaws of the undergraduate student government of the University of Connecticut according to those presented in changes to the bylaws 9/19/2012 to reflect the policies adopted hereafter. Respectfully submitted. So now let me read the changes. The changes to the bylaws. You have those up there? Okay. So Senate operating policies and procedures. The presiding speaker of the Senate will propose a set of Senate operating policies and procedures to the Senate after the fall elections every academic year. These Senate operating policies and procedures must include any dress policies, attendance policies, and any policies regarding the spirit of the Senate. Other general Senate policies may also be included. And also, the Senate operating policies and procedures must be approved by a simple majority of the Senate. So what this says, every year, the Speaker will present a set of Senate operating policies and procedures, and the Senate will approve it, will make amendments to it, or will reject it. And the Speaker has to present a set of Senate operating policies and procedures that work for Senate. Does that make sense? That's what the bylaws reflect. Or these changes to the bylaw reflect, rather. Now I can move into my Senate operating policies and procedures, which I presented for this academic year.
Mr. Speaker,
Yeah.
I think it's appropriate to approve this before we move into approving your policies.
So do you want to split the question? Because the act currently, The act currently, if you read the act, yeah, it has both of them in the same act.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Then you could just, yeah.
Okay, so my Senate operating policies and procedures pretty much say dress policy, senators will be, that's not it. No. It's not- excuse me. Sorry about that. Dress policy. Senators will be dressed in professional attire. Men will be dressed in a dress shirt and tie, dress pants, and dress shoes, and will cover themselves respectively. Women will dress attire suitable for professional settings such as an office, and will cover themselves respectively. Senators will not wear jeans, sneakers, or any other clothing deemed unprofessional by the Speaker of the Senate. Senators in violation of the dress policy as deemed by the Speaker of the Senate will not be recognized by the chair as present at the meeting. Resultantly, that senator will lose his or her speaking, voting, and general rights at the meeting to entertain motions, etc. The Sergeant at Arms will be integral in enforcing these policies. Attendance policy. Senators will be present at mandatory undergraduate student government events pertaining to the legislative faction. Events pertaining to the Senate include formal senates and the mandatory meetings of the student Senate committees the senator committed to at the beginning of his or her respective term. Committing to his or her respective at the beginning of his or her respective term is already outlined in the bylaws, so you have to do that anyway. And unexcused absence from any of these events results in a written, either electronic or physical warning from the Speaker of the Senate. A second subsequent unexcused absence in the same academic semester as the first unexcused absence results in the Senate considering to remove the senator from office at the next Senate. That means I don't kick anybody off. What happens is the Senate considers the position of that senator. Okay? The Speaker of the Senate will excuse the senator from a mandatory commitment no more than 2 times during the course of one academic semester. In the case of a missed mandatory committee meeting, the chair of that respective committee will make their recommendation for excusing the senator. So what this says is I can't just say that a senator can keep missing Chairperson Himes' meetings, for example. She will make the recommendation for excusing that senator from those commitments. After 2 excused absences from the student Senate meetings, further requests for excused absences must be approved by the executive committee by a 2/3 vote. This is already in the bylaws, and the reason for this is that I shouldn't be the final say in terms of, I can't just keep giving out excused absences for Senate. If there are more requests for excused absences, we won't trouble the Senate because the entire executive committee at their meetings will have to convene and vote by a 2/3 majority to keep continuing to give this student excused absences. Remember that unexcused absences don't account for illnesses and deaths and stuff. Those aren't unexcused. Those are very much excused absences. Electronics policy. Senators will refrain from using their laptops, tablets, cell phones, and other electronics from when the Senate is called to order to whenever the meeting is adjourned, excluding any recesses in between. Senators will be allowed to use their electronics to accompany any of their presentations to formal Senate. Senators will refrain from engaging in any disruptive behavior as a result of their electronics use. Disruptive behavior is characterized by any behavior that is inhibitory to the Senate, its members, or its spirit. Disruptive behavior is up to the discretion of the Speaker. I can't even talk for this long. If the Speaker does deem a senator's electronics behavior as disruptive, at first a vocal and audible warning will be issued by the Speaker on the Senate floor. A repeated or continued, this should be offense considered. A repeated or continued offense considered. Offense considered as disruptive the Senate will consider the removal of that senator from the Senate chamber. So the Senate will consider. The Speaker doesn't kick somebody out of the Senate chamber. The Sergeant at Arms will be integral in enforcing these policies. And fourth, the Senate spirit. Senators will carry a professional and cohesive attitude towards Senate and will conduct their business to the best of their ability with the highest standard of integrity. Any other action injurious to this attitude will result in, at first, a vocal and audible warning. That will be, sorry, down the second line. That will be, warning that will be issued by the Speaker on the Senate floor. A repeated or continued injurious action will result in the Senate's considering the removal of that senator from the Senate chamber. The Sergeant at Arms will be integral in enforcing these policies. Are there any questions?
Are there any questions? Chairperson
Giordina.
So if a senator is not, to clarify, the senator is not dressed appropriately, they would use their voting rights in the Senate?
That's correct.
Are there any further questions?
Senator Perez? Yep. Take it out.
I guess my question. As far as the concern, the man and woman part, how about just keep it gender, sex neutral, and just go with gender in general? Will be dressed professionally as opposed to highlighting each individual sex and then saying the same thing but in different ways. So
I can take that as a friendly amendment. Would you like to sit over there and fix the wording of that? It doesn't matter. The spirit of the legislation is the same.
Are there any objections to saying that?
Anyone else? Senator Goodman.
This is more of like the son as well. I just was like, here's like a scenario. What if like I had an exam, for example, and I wanted to come to Senate and I was running late, but I didn't have time to change, but I normally dress up. So I would lose my speaking rights for that Senate.
What I would probably do in that situation would just let you come late to the Senate, go back, change. Probably would be tired after an exam anyway. But I think the concern here is more about in regards to having this being something that is broadcasted across campus. We want to maintain the sanctity of this event. And I have class from 5:45 speaking personally, so it's tough for me too. So I got dressed today at like 2:30 in the afternoon, and I look like an idiot in a shirt and tie walking around campus for 3 hours before my Senate. But I mean it's tough, and I completely understand where you're coming from. At the same time, we want to set some sort of policy that everybody can rally behind, and that makes it equitable and fair for everybody who takes those extra steps and pains towards getting dressed for Senate. So in that case, just come like 15 minutes late, get dressed, and then come.
And one other thing I was going to ask you about the electronic policy.
Sure. You want to pull that up?
Is there a specific part A, B, C?
So we won't be able to use any electronics at all.
Well, I mean, this is going to sound, I shouldn't say this, it's not being sensitive. I don't mean to take us back to the Stone Age, but I guess what I mean to say by will refrain from using their laptops, it means they'll refrain themselves from using their laptops, cell phones, tablets, etc. So yeah, in effect, yes, but at the same time, I'm not going to stand there, or the Sergeant at Arms isn't going to stand there and point to somebody and be like, hey, I saw you, use your cell phone, get out, or anything like that. That's not what I'm trying to do here. The intent of this legislation is just to set a defined, specific piece of legislation that says this is how we're going to conduct ourselves. We're going to refrain from using our laptops and cell phones. We're going to get dressed for Senate. We're going to come, and we're going to keep the spirit of Senate intact. That's what this legislation says.
Well, is there like any language that goes with incorporate into like the legislation, sort of include that, which is, about electronics, friendly amendments?
What we can do, I can't think of it off the cuff. Maybe during the debate section, we can come up with some sort of an amendment, and then we can amend it then.
As a point of order, questions is for clarifying legislation. Can you say this in debate here?
But that, I understand.
Anyone else? Senator McCabe?
Just roll to the part after electronics. Any other action injurious? Can we be more specific than that, or is that totally up to speaker discretion?
Any action that the speaker takes can be challenged, for example. So it's not like it's unchecked power by the speaker. What I'm speaking more towards, the spirit behind that is the word, was if you guys remember, Senator Violet, I believe, referenced that this particular Senate earlier, was when we have people on the podium, taking considerable personal blows at members of our own Senate. There should be a clause that says you can stop that. That's what this is saying. There should be a place, the speaker should be allowed to say, this isn't appropriate, and it should stop. And we've had, this is going to sound crazy, we've also had issues where the police has needed to be contacted and have somebody removed from the chamber. And I understand, for the new senators, this might seem like ridiculous, but that has happened. So that's where this part is coming from. That does not mean that you can just be like, oh, you're looking at me funny, get the hell out. You know what I mean? That's not what this means at all. But injurious action is getting up here and cussing another senator out, getting up here and injuring what we're trying to accomplish. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you. Also, from the first part.
Sure.
The dress code? Yes, please. Professional attire, also, we have clarification on that as well.
Well, that's why I was doing B and what was the original legislation had shirt and tie, and some sort of dress shoes in terms of not wearing sneakers. That's all right now. But I mean, now we don't have clarifications. I think what you're wearing is fine, for the record. Is that what you're concerned about? This is professional enough for me. It would be nicer if you were wearing pants, but that's okay. I won't comment on
that into consideration.
wardrobe. You understand what I'm trying to do here?
Yeah.
I just don't want people coming in here with a t-shirt and jeans and coming up to Senate, and this has happened before as well, just taking it as a joke. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you're comfortable wearing what you're wearing into an office or a professional setting, and I think this is about as casual as it gets, that's fine. And the sergeant at arms, like I said, will be enforcing these policies. It's not a concentration of power at the speaker. Does that make sense? Does that help?
Yep, absolutely. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we move into debate.
Can I say one thing?
Go ahead.
Before you guys debate, you know what, I said it now. Go ahead.
Chairperson Hines.
Since Dan Massaro's here, I'm just going to take his job with Braylor. The first thing in the actual act itself, I don't know where I saw it.
Chairperson, if there are no objection, can we just make, can we just keep that out of Senate so we don't have to use up Senate time?
Well, I do have one.
So I guess what I'm saying is that any grammar or any spelling mistakes, I don't think anyone is going to object to changing those. Are there any objections to changing grammar and spelling? Seeing none. Any amendments that require Senate?
Just one thing about the attire. I think that it should be defined for male and female, and I think maybe to compromise, we can say something along the lines of whichever gender you identify with. Because, I mean, it's a problem normally, and I think professional attire, that's too big.
All right, so can I get there?
Yeah.
So, what we have here is two conflicting ideologies. As the person who presented this legislation, to be honest, I have no preference, and here's why. I think that the spirit, as long as the spirit of the legislation remains intact, I don't mind. So if you would like more specific legislation, more specific terminology or words or language in there, that's what I had initially proposed the legislation with. You don't. So if anybody else wants to weigh on that issue, this is the time to debate, and then you can amend the hell out of that.
Senator Alvarez.
All right, not to turn this into like a whole big debate, I just thought the original version was very clear and very specific and really worked. I don't know why it has to be gender neutral. Dress isn't gender neutral, and it's not. It just isn't. And I thought the way it was laid out was very well stated and very clear.
So if there are no objections, can we just take a vote on this? The amendment that was proposed, I know we kind of rushed it. So are there any objections to taking that vote?
I'll take your amendment to revert it back as friendly as well. So then we can vote on it.
Okay, this is what we're going to do, okay? We're going to vote on the motion to go back to what it was before, okay? So we changed it. Okay, just 1 second. So motion, what we are talking about now is going back to what it was with clear definitions, okay? So if you're coming, that's the amendment on the floor. And can someone just make that amendment really quick? Senator Guggen's motions that, and anyone seconds? Senator Minetti seconds it. So that's the amendment, going back to clear definition. Are there any questions for Senator Guggen's on that? Yep.
If you wanted to amend the amendment, what would that
That
mean?
would be during debate for the amendment. Are there any questions for the amendment, which is going back to the clear definition of two different gender dress codes? Any questions? Seeing none, we go into debate on that amendment. Senator what?
I just wanted to mention that I think a reasonable middle ground between the two choices that we've been introduced with is maybe mentioning all the previous attire that was mentioned in the original statement, however, leaving gender neutral, saying either he or she, male or female. So basically state male or female genders can wear this body of clothing. So that's just a suggestion. So I don't know if anyone.
So just to clarify, are you making a motion to amend that, or are you just suggesting that
Motion to amend the amendment so that we include all dress types while keeping the gender neutral instead of leaving it as big as
Yeah. Can you, what we'll do is I'll continue calling on people to debate while in that time you could just write up the correct language that you'd like to quote. Any other person who would like to debate the amendment? Anyone? Senator Goodings. Yes?
Is he debating the original amendment, or we're now on to the second?
No, we're just waiting for that until the language is written, and then then Senator Violet will be able to make that motion. So we're just talking about the original, not any changes.
It's not pertaining to this section, but are we just only debating of this section?
Yes, yes, yes.
We're just debating whether we should revert back to what's highlighted in red.
Okay, my debate was for a different section.
Chair, Member Coordinator D'Angelo.
Okay. So looking at what was written previously, I don't necessarily think that gendering the qualifications here is really helpful. I mean, it's helpful for men because it says exactly what men should wear, but it doesn't say what women should wear. It just says women will dress in an attire suitable for a professional setting, such as an office, which is not much different from senators will be dressed in professional attire. I don't think we have to be parochial here. So I think that, and I'm not a fan of gendering this. So this isn't a paternalist organization, meaning that it's a job. So when you go into an office setting, you know what's professional attire. So I think that using it just as senators will dress in professional attire is acceptable. Point of order.
Yeah.
Because the amendment has been suggested to an amendment, discussion and debate should be on the amendment. We can't be talking about changing and discussing that without first voting on the changes to it, because any of that debate might be cleared up with the amendment.
Just to clarify, I think the chair suggested that we wait on making that motion, so that motion wasn't made, and that's why we went back to it. And I could recognize Senator Wiley to make that amendment to an amendment right now.
Yeah, so I do have a motion. So the motion is to simply change men from men, what it says up there, from men to senators will dress themselves in dress shirt, tie, dress pants, dress shoes, will cover themselves respectively, or will wear dress attire suitable for a professional setting such as an office. And therefore that will, and then move Article C.
Time?
Yes, we're attire suitable for a professional setting.
And you want to take out the part C of it? Or no, it's not there.
Yeah, so senators will be dressed in a dress shirt and tie, dress pants and dress shoes, or other attire suitable for a professional setting.
This is Violet's proposed amendment to reverting back to the language that was in there before. The motion, are there any questions?
Is there a second on that amendment to an amendment?
Sorry, information. I don't believe what is up there is a point of order. I'm not sure what it says what is up there.
Oh, so can you repeat it?
Sure. Senators will be dressed in a dress shirt and tie, dress pants and dress shoes, or other wear attire suitable for a professional setting. Or will wear attire suitable for
this?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Is there a second to that amendment? Senator Lewis, are there any questions on that amendment?
Point of information, did Senator Violet intend for the end of his clause to be professional setting? Should the rest of that be deleted?
Do you want to continue? That's all. Is that your?
This is the way I originally said.
Okay. Are there any questions on the amendment? Senator Perez. And to make it quicker, what I'm going to suggest is that if you have any questions, just please line up so we could move faster. So if I see, like, if I just give you a nod, just come after that person and just stand in the line. Okay? Senator Perez, continue.
Can someone explain to me the difference between what is suitable for a professional setting and what the the difference between that and professional attire?
Senator Violet, would you like to clarify that? Or you could.
Professional attire applies to a larger range than just dress shirt, dress and a tie, and dress pants and dress shoes. Professional attire adds dignity to your clothing and demonstrates respect to the situation that you're in. One is very specific in terms of name.
Senator Perez.
I guess what I'm getting at is that it's almost the exact same thing.
If you don't have a question, if you are discussion.
But it's a question. It's
okay.
So it's kind of the same thing, but if you want to continue to like expand on it, then why don't you just add like what women wear for professional, or what some people in general wear for professional, like a skirt or a professional dress. If you want to get really technical with it, like why don't we just add that to it too? So we can include women. I mean, I look around and there's tons of women in the room, and I see dresses, except dresses and skirts are not included in that list.
I apologize, but we cannot amend an amendment to an amendment. So if you would like to, we are going to have to accept this or reject this and then go back and edit that. And we could always do that, but as of now, I apologize, but we won't be able to. And so what was your question?
So you won't be able to change it?
No.
To add it into there?
No. Senator Gugan.
Is Senator Violet's amendment, or going back to the A part, I don't think the A part is included with the amendment, wasn't the original amendment?
Yes.
So the question of having it be.
Was that, I missed it then?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. That was my question, just making sure that that's what it was.
Does that reflect, I apologize, let's clarify one more time. Is that what your amendment, just take out A and what was C and just add that?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. We are, no, because it's a motion to call previous question is to end debate, not as to end question. So we haven't gotten to that yet. So are there any questions? Seeing none, we move into debate. Okay, so the motion, the previous question, okay, I'll explain this simply. Okay, so we're gonna, if this passes by 2/3 vote, we're gonna vote again on accepting the amendment to an amendment, and then we'll go back to the amendment. So all those in favor of calling the previous question, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Is there a question?
Okay.
So now
Any abstentions? The previous question is called. Now we are going to vote on accepting this language. Okay. Not the whole amendment, even though it's like the entire amendment has been changed. But all those in favor of accepting the amendment to an amendment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Abstentions. Clearly passes. Now we go back on the amendment, which is the same language. Inherently. Is there any debate on the amendment to an amendment? Yes, Senator McCabe. Anyone else who want to speak, please also line up after Senator McCabe.
So is the initial amendment was what's up there, except it was split into two parts, and it wasn't gender neutral, correct? The amendment to the amendment is gender neutral.
I would defer it to who was the first person who made the Senator Perez. This is your amendment. So would you want?
Senator Perez's amendment was
Okay, Senator Dugan, so this one, it was Senator Dugan's amendment. So see if you.
What is it? Is that on mine? Yes. Okay, so my amendment was getting rid of the friendly amendment that was adopted in changing that into the two sections we had for changing it just to one previous A that was up there where it said just professional attire. My amendment was getting rid of that and changing it back to the original wording. His amendment was then changing the wording to gender neutral. So his was inserting the gender neutral, and then mine was reverting back to this instead of the one line that was accepted as a friendly amendment that just said senators will be dressed in professional attire. The question that we're voting on is, do we want senators will be dressed in professional attire, or do we want A? As it stands
we're
right
at debate right now?
Yes.
All right, then I would recommend we change it back to the wording where it was just professional attire, because this seems rather redundant when it says, which gender neutral, it says suitable for professional setting. And then right after that this is what we're really getting at is the jeans, the sneakers, that's I think in between professional attire and dress policy. That seems to cover all the bases.
So to clarify, so you want to just go back to that one line about
Well,
professional.
I would recommend against approving this language.
You're not making a motion to change this. You're just saying we should go back to
Because if
it?
we go down and that this is an amendment, then it would go back to just professional attire, correct?
Yeah.
Yes, then that is what I'd say.
Okay.
That's what I
Okay, so you just want to move this down. Okay, yeah, makes sense. Senator Manfredi?
Yes. I would like to disagree with that. I think it's a little bit redundant, but it just clarifies whether that's fine, there's nothing wrong with it.
Anyone else for debate? Senator Dugan.
Just between the fence and my amendment, I feel that it has been an issue in the past as it has been brought up, and this just kind of puts it in stone so people can't say, well, my definition of professional attire is different. So this kind of just gives it a more solid definition, and I feel like it's needed because of how we've had in the past.
Membership coordinator, D'Angelo. Yeah, please, just stand in the line so it makes sense easier.
I do agree with Merrick, but I also agree with Senator Perez that if you're going to make it specific, include the professional wear for women.
So are you making a motion to add something?
Can I?
Yes.
No, I don't think I can.
I think it's because in previous years and custom of Senate, execs are allowed to make motions as if they are appointing someone. It's in chair's opinion that any member of exec is able to make a motion in Senate. So yes, you could make a motion.
Okay, you don't have to. No, yeah, I'm going to. So I move to amend senators dress in dress shirt and tie, dress pants and dress shoes for professional dress suit, dresses, a skirt. Yeah, absolutely.
So I'll just say it from here. She yields to the yes. So before she makes a motion, what you're reconciling with is exactly why it was like that from the beginning. I don't care if men and women are written in there as well, but like, it's hard for me to say, okay, you have to wear a skirt or you have to wear a dress, and then have somebody come with dress pants or something professional. You know, I guess what I'm saying is it's harder to define professional female attire, or limit them rather to what they can and can't wear. Whereas if the spirit is maintained, I feel like it would be fine. That's what I know. I'm not.
Speaker Gandhi, I think you're out of order. So you're in motion.
I said what I needed to say.
Please next time.
So you can still motion if you want.
Yeah, please. How?
We didn't, there wasn't any specific, there wasn't any specific language describing, higher.
So would you like to take a minute to just
Yes.
clarify that, please?
Put it in my words, yes.
Okay.
I just have a brief comment.
Yep.
I don't think it really matters at this time. We have a lot more to do tonight, and honestly, if it becomes an issue, which hopefully it won't, hopefully the sergeant at arms can deal with it then. I think that we are spending way too much time on this, and I kind of opened a can of worms, and I'm sorry, but it really does not matter. I think we should move on.
So you recommend that we postpone this resolution until the next Senate? If the motion to postpone could be any moment, yes, it's a privilege motion, I think. So would you like to motion that?
No.
Okay. So we are still in debate. Councilor. Please line up if you want to speak.
So, I'm just going to say that it does matter because clearly it makes some people in the room uncomfortable and you're talking about the spirit of the Senate. Part of the spirit of the Senate is have everyone in this room feel comfortable, feel welcome, and feel at home. And I don't feel at home if I don't see up there that I can wear a skirt or a dress and it's considered to be professional. Like I said, there's men and women in this room. There's people in this room wearing dresses. We could say a professional dress or a professional or appropriately length skirt would be the proper definition for that. So
Does it say that you can't wear a skirt or a dress?
it doesn't include it as a part of the things that are considered respectable and professional and suitable for the Senate.
Please, if you have a point of information, please refer it to the chair, which is me, and please not directly go, because that's where we get confused as to what we are talking about. So if you have a question for Senator Perez, or if you want to clarify something, then you should say, if Senator Perez, please yield the floor, and then you could get the floor, you could ask your question, and she could answer it for you. But please don't just jump in middle, because it's going to make things a lot more complicated than what it needs to be. So Senator Perez, you may continue.
So yeah, and why this matters, well, I don't know, I'm Senator Person Diversity, whatever. And so as part of that, my big thing is I want to make sure everyone's included, and I'm using terms and language that includes everyone, because we want to be friendly to all types of communities. And we want to be welcoming, we want to invite more people to join us. We're not going to do that by just using this language that we're using in here, or gendering everything, or trying to put people into boxes, because we're not concerned with that. We're concerned with other things. So that's what I'm coming from. So it does matter to me, especially from why.
Chairperson Daniels.
Okay, I'd like to agree with what Senator McCabe said, in that we should just reject the amendment and go back to the language proposed by Senator Perez and accept it as a friendly amendment by Speaker Gandhi. Just regarding that Senator should address professional attire. I understand the concern of Senator Googans that there have been issues in the past. However, I think point B up there does give the Speaker the ability in a situation that someone comes in a manner that is unprofessional or does not respect the Senate to take action. And I trust that the Speaker and the Sergeant at Arms will interpret that based on the spirit that Speaker Gandhi presented this in, and will not abuse that, but rather will be able to reasonably determine what is unprofessional attire based on point B. And I agree with Chairperson Hines that this has gone on long enough, and I would urge everyone to just go ahead and reject that language and go back to professional attire so we don't have to worry about gender specifics.
Senator, please.
I would agree that we need to stop this, but I would just say accept this amendment because it includes everybody. The original amendment was not uninclusive. It just didn't list all of the things that women can wear, because there are more things that is acceptable for women to wear than men can wear. I do not wear a skirt or high heels here. That would be inappropriate. There are differences between what genders wear. There are differences between genders. We do not need to make it some socially conscious, gender-neutral thing with every wording that we put in this whole thing. We can just accept this wording because it includes everything, and it's not particularly necessary to change the wording just to make sure that nobody is upset by saying men and women. That is all.
Senator Coaching.
All right, so I think this discussion is pushing a lot of people to a very good place. You guys are talking about very important things, and that's great. You're taking ownership of your own policy. However, I would also like to point out that in the remainder of our agenda, we have thousands and thousands of dollars to deal with. So I'd like to remind you of that. So I would like to make a privilege motion to lay this entire thing as it stands on the table, meaning that at the end of our meeting, it may be taken from the table, or we'll end up on next sentence agenda under unfinished business. I make this motion. Someone can second it.
Seconded by Ron.
Thank you.
Are there, since this is for like business voting, will all those in favor of laying this motion on the table entirely, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Abstentions. Passes. Here you go.
Just to clarify, what I accepted as a friendly amendment is what's on the table. So, yeah. Okay. Including the amendment presented by Senator Dugans and the amendment to the amendment presented by Membership Coordinator D'Angelo. Sure.
So if we do come back to this or during the next debate, you're going to start at this amendment. You're not going to start at.
You're not going to start at this legislation. You're going to start at the amendment. That's where we are ending the debate. So don't be surprised if like we don't start at one like at the top and just go into motion.
Next, we move into an act concerning funding session 1, fall of 2012. Chairperson Giardina.
So this act is the funding board did not there was a application taken from last spring, and we were supposed to review it in the funding session that Senate considered last Senate. So this is just bringing that application to the Senate. This was the action ordered by the appeals board. So can't find the computer, so I'm going to read it up here. Yeah, so whereas the funding board tabled the regional tournament application from the UConn Men's Soccer Club on funding session 2012, whereas the funding board did not consider the regional tournament application in funding session 1 fall 2012, whereas the funding board recommends that the UConn Men's Soccer Club be partially funded in the amount of $1,963.50 due to category D cuts. Be it resolved that the UConn Men's Soccer Club be funded $1,962.50 for the regional tournament application. So it's basically just an addendum to the previous funding session act that you reviewed.
So this is your motion, right? So would you like to entertain this motion? Well, okay. There's a motion on the floor. It doesn't matter. It's not a motion. Are there any questions for the chairperson? Seeing none, we move into a debate. Is there any debate? Seeing none, we move into a vote. All those in favor of enacting an act containing an addendum to funding session 1, fall of 2012, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed signify by saying nay. Abstentions? Thoroughly passes. Next, we move into an act regarding tier 2 funding policies.
All right, so the moment we've all been waiting for, the funding policies that have been in the works since December of last academic year. These are totally ready to go in place. Once Viv figures out the computer, I'll have my little PowerPoint. I promise it's only like 6 or 7 slides. It's real quick, but I know some of you haven't seen this yet. I know others of you have seen it but didn't read it, so I'll just go through it to make sure that everybody knows what's going on. Move through it very quickly. Good to go. Full screen. Close. Play. All right. Our new funding policy. This is going to go into effect for next semester, but based on the new format, we need to implement this starting tomorrow. Get this passed. Next slide, please. The reason why we're doing this, the current policies, I don't know if anyone has read them. Hands, if you've read them. Oh, brave people. The current policies are kind of a slapdash document right now. There's lots of clauses in there that don't really make any sense or very specific in circumstance. It makes them very hard to navigate, especially from, as the judiciary is going to point out, during appeals of funding requests, when things can be interpreted at least 5 different ways, just off the top of our head during the appeals hearing. So that was motivating factor number 1, to clean that up. 2, we can't actually plan with our current policies. We just have to look at what, we have to wait until the session comes through, applications are submitted, and then we either have enough money or we don't. It doesn't really allow for responsible funding. And yeah, that's basically it. You can't budget around that. Next slide, please. The new model allows us to plan a semester ahead. It also asks the groups to plan a semester ahead, but more planning really isn't a bad thing for anyone, ever. Next slide, please. The document itself is much cleaner. You'll notice that it is much shorter than the current policy. The current one is upwards of like 15 pages. Right now, I think you're holding one that's 7 or 889 maximum. The reason for that is that we've cut out a lot of information that either 1 isn't necessary or 2 is now going to go in another document. But you guys will notice that clause number 2, right underneath definitions, describes an operating procedures for the funding board. What that is an executive document, and John was going to tell you more about how that works in a minute. It is an executive document that allows the funding board to, as the name would imply, operate as needed. So it takes out a lot of information that says we need this little bit of information for in order to accept applications. And we have to move numbers around in this little way or raise or lower percentages according to a certain equation. That's not policy, that's procedure. So we've removed it from the policy and placed it into the procedure that's much more flexible. You guys don't want to listen to me or John or anyone talk for hours and hours and hours about why we're moving 1 percentage 3 points to the left. It's not something you guys, as the legislature, should have to concern yourselves with. This allows us to make that flexible. It is accessible to you, and if you have a problem with it, we're more than happy to address that. And you guys will have the power to force us to address that should you legislate that it be done. But it cleans up the policy itself significantly. Also, we've removed, I know we had a question about this, we've removed inventory procedures from this document. Inventory, we're going to try and move that more towards the Office of the Comptroller and out of Funding Board, because we have a lot more inventory beyond what the Funding Board funds. It makes a little bit more sense that that be under the Comptroller's jurisdiction, and whoever else is responsible will probably be appointing someone to manage that. But again, means that this document makes it much more simpler in a new one. Next slide, please. The way that this is going to work is that if this is passed, it will become active. The application is ready and will become active starting tomorrow. Applications will be due on November 2nd. In that time, groups will compile their budget for spring 2013, submit that to us. Then we will go through it and decide how much each organization can be allotted based on the money that we have. After that, groups will be notified of how much money is available to them, and we'll give instructions specifically based on what they asked for, what documentation they need to provide us so that we can give them those funds. There will be training informationals held in the union, in person. We'll bait them with pizza. We'll get people to know everything about it. It'll be great. There's also going to be an online training component so that anyone who can't make an informational is able to pass the certification test that allows people to apply for funding. And there's going to be help hours with any member of USG who wants to learn these policies through and through, and help members go through, or organizations go step by step through their application. Everyone on executive has graciously volunteered an hour of their week in order to do this. Any senator who is willing to do it. There's also more than one day. Any time during the week you have available, you can say you'll be in the office for 1 hour from, say, 1 o'clock on Friday to 2 o'clock on that Friday. Great. You'll be able to help organizations get set up. If no one comes for the help hour, you get to do homework for an hour. Next slide. Actually, we're not much of that. Next slide. So, in brief, better planning makes us more efficient. Ready to go. Do the people. Before we move into the policy document itself, it's in front of you. I'd like to put two motions in front of everyone. First, I would like to move that we address, that we allow spelling and grammatical errors to be addressed post-Senate, so that we don't have to go through all of those. I know some of you are better at grammar than I am. Most of you are probably better at grammar and spelling than I am. So those will be addressed afterwards. Second, I would like to move that we not read the entire document out loud in order to save time and get to more of the issues. You all have a copy in front of you. If someone didn't get one, I have copies behind me. If we can accept those motions, great.
Rather than voting on each individual motion, if we can just, if there are any objections to the motions presented by Comptroller Porcine, either one, the first one or the second one, please signify it by raising your placard. What is your objection? Senator Rana. Seeing no objections, I've entertained your motions to adopt.
Okay, so I'm not going to read the entire thing for you, but first I'd like John to explain what exactly the operating procedure is going to do. You wrote it, and then we'll talk tonight.
Basically what the operating procedures are, it's just what is funding board going to do to review the policy. So you'll see that when you read through priority review is the application. So when you read through the policy that you have in front of you, it's mostly, how are we going to prioritize? So what are the priorities of the undergraduate student government when it comes to funding? And what things will we not fund no matter what? So those are kind of big ticket ideas that are kind of form the philosophy behind funding. These procedures, though, are basically just so we have the priority categories in the policies in front of you, so how do we implement those priority categories? And how do we review all the applications to make sure they're not funding anything that we're restricting? So that's basically what is in here. I'm going to just go, there's not too much that's different from what we do right now. We're still taking the applications, review all of them as a funding board, make sure that the applications are complete. All the documents that they have to submit eventually by the time that they receive funding are pretty much the same, save for one that I'd just like to highlight. We are going to be asking for a kind of a more detailed summary and justification for their request than they give currently. Basically just so we can better make decisions about whether this application or request would fall under a certain group. And the big thing that I would just like to touch on here is how we're going to apply the priority categorizations that are in the policies in front of you, and how we're going to apply them to the funding decision. So basically what we're going to do is, as you'll see, categories A and B are funded 100% always, unless they're denied. And then categories C, D, and E are funded at most 75%. Basically what we'll do is if you can't fund everything at 100%, C, D, and E is then we will basically we'll reduce each first down to the minimum of 4 or 60%. Then we'll go to each of the categories, category B, category C, the same way until we are under whatever program budget we're funding for that semester. And then if we still don't have that money, we'll just go back to the lower category and start denying again, in general, we do have applications, it's fairly simple. We can make sure they have complete, and then they can requirement for that are pretty much the same as they are now. So I guess if you have any questions about that, I'm not going to read through all right now. But if you have any questions about generally where they're going, I can think of that. Again, if the Senate wants to amend the operating procedures, that's certainly within their power. They can do that by amending the policy.
Are there any questions for the chairperson? Seeing none, we move to the debate. The debate is, when you still have a motion. Are you just? Okay, you can keep going. Okay. So,
First, I'd like to say that formatting is off right now, because we were using a formatting program, and copy and paste it out of that. And it's a live formatting program, so just know that it's a little prettier than it right now. So, I'm going to go section by section and take questions on it. First, the preamble. Goes straightforward what it is, because it sets forth our mission as student government funding future organizations. Next, context. Definitions also really straightforward. This is powers, procedures that John just talked about. Next, eligibility restrictions. Any information that an organization would need to know as to whether or not they can apply for funding and how to do it is in this section here. So whether they're eligible to apply for a budget or through the Senate is outlined here in all the things that are not allowed for also. Next, semester requests and allocations. This outlines the procedure and categories for funding the budget. Applications, those ones that are going live tomorrow, will be through this process. It outlines how that works, what would need to happen in them, sort of most of the procedures, and how we're going to treat those applications when they come in. Next, legislative requests. This section outlines how an organization or group of students would apply for funding through the Senate directly. Who they need to approach, how many sponsors they would have, and how that's clear for you guys to actually vote on specific requests. Dispersal of funds. These are all the policies needed in order to actually disperse money to the group to conduct whatever thing they're doing. Operation guidelines, essentially general rules in there, don't put it in a category. Sanctions. Sanctions allow us to program groups that use these policies or really anything that have to do with us funding them. Appeals. Appeals is how groups, if but very simple. Right. Yep. Yep. Essentially, advertising says that whatever thing this is not expecting everyone on campus or just anyone on campus rather to show up. So, for example, a sports practice, funding associated with that would be kind of advertisers all over practice team. I mean, except that the members at the time, you're not soliciting everyone on campus to potentially show up. That's what advertising is. Basically, the idea is that if they are actively opening this up, if there's some events where they're expecting, I mean, if they're expecting 100 people, they are trying to bring people in. That's what these are for. So that when they're trying to do that, basically, they're going to be advertising, trying to control it. For me, that's not what the capital is. It's the act, the activity we're trying to bring in outside the group into that event for sure. Should the organization maybe receive funding versus the past? And I see you and I would say that yes, I would say the reason why the procedure is not open to, not open, but it's not directly required to be approved by the Senate, is because the procedure contains information that is day-to-day. And sometimes with the Senate meeting of every week, oftentimes there are, in the current policy, there are things that come up that we have to wait until the Senate to address. And in that interim period, it's kind of a gray area, sometimes breaking our rules in order to accommodate something that's come up. What we've done is include all of those things in procedures so that they can change day to day. The policies always take precedence over those procedures. So the Senate always has the power to amend the policies, which will overrule any procedures. So the groups that we listed there,
person is not applicable.
Just to address that same wording that's under bylaws, address citizens, maybe request funding or receive funding through the Senate, the rhetorical of funding or request by any request. And we recommend that the clarifies funding or request I was not.
Seeing none, we move into the debate. The debate is on the motion to enact is examining the funding policies, the additional funding policies. Is that what we're doing now? The debate is regarding the motion to enact regarding the additional funding policies. All right, this is the debate. Sarah.
Under elderly and restrictions, policy for organization, their best government more than one that and the other part is request allocation that all funding can be submitted by the private sector. Reason I have that not really happy with those things is that if church organizations and planning something to the next semester, first of all, they may not even have the idea of whether it's that. So if I'm planning something in March, I may have to but if an idea comes up to have something in April, that was an idea came up better than that makes no sense. They don't know that they're doing this, they have no idea that's happening, and suddenly they're being told that they have to budget for when it does like this. So I think that's sort of an issue, because it takes away the opportunity with church organizations.
This is amazing. Thank you.
Just response. I think that this policy covers those organizations that may have like unintended events after the deadline, say our deadline and request funding once more and through the legislature meeting. So there are opportunities for them to get money for them that are not initially budgeted for. They just have to be more reasonable and conservative with those requests. So I do think these policies are along the same, pose any problems at the moment with organizations having to budget and planning unchecked events.
Thank you.
Concern with something legislation that not having church organization has a means or the knowledge of policies or the experience with church policies to submit legislation that would be passed to the Senate. Most likely they will come up with some sort of inconsistency or something that doesn't violate what we set as procedures, and it wouldn't work. They would get denied. They would be stuck in the same position they're currently in.
Is there any further debate on the issue? The issue being motion to enact policy, funding future funding policy. Is there any purpose of getting?
The same clause, the amendment that, in the clause, which is, that we changed, from the Senate to legislative clause.
Is there any further debate?
Alright, so I figured I'd put my sense in here. We're just being a little bit quiet. I think that has to do with the fact that we're busy with this. And, this is the most complex document that we've passed in my time at USG. And it changes the entire scope of everything, if you do regarding the funding. So the gravity moment, and I'd just like to say that the amount of work that John, Ed, and the rest of the funding policy task force last year put into this is just absolutely unreal. And what you're looking at right now is, I think, the most comprehensive funding policy that certainly the school has ever seen. I think probably one of the best in the region and in the country. I mean, you looked at schools all across the country and how governments do their funding, and you take the best of all of that. And John has did an absolutely phenomenal job of putting that all in one document. And last spring we looked at this document, and there were some things we wanted to change, so we decided to push it up this fall, and the changes were made. I think these policies are 100% ready to go, and I'm excited to get the word out later tonight that USG just passed some absolutely monumental legislation. So I hope you guys support this legislation. I know that I do 100%, and just congratulations to guys for really absolutely outstanding amount of work.
Is there a further debate on the motion?
This is fairly tier 2 organization, right?
We're going to actually
Correct. This is available tomorrow. As soon as we put out on this, you can actually remember this. This will be available to and I probably just send it myself too.
Is there any further debate? Seeing none. Seeing none, we move into a vote. Roll call is to approve the motion as a call. Which means I'll call each voting member's name individually. They'll vote aye in support of this motion to enact consistent with the tier 2 funding policy as presented by Councilor Shane and Chairperson Virginia, or they'll vote nay against it. And they can also abstain. Alvarez.
Aye.
Foster. Casanova. Chen. Chang. Jody. Chow. Braddock. Donnelly. Enos. Giordina. Gooding.
Abstain.
Googins. Grant.
Aye.
Patricia.
Aye.
Innes. Jones. Clark. Levine. Lakshmanarayan. Manfredi. McClellan. Kennedy. Murphy. Ordinance. Paul. Perez. Forts. Rana Neal. Rana Park. Riskin. Sergeant. Schofield. Smith. Benjamin. Smith Kyle. Verbeek. Violet. Ward. Wanderers. Wiley.
Congratulations on having it passed. My name is
Oh, you writing it? Eight? How do you vote? Cody?
Aye.
Everyone wants to get on the,
Now, we move back into enacting some of the Senate operating policies and procedures. Where we left off was, okay,
I would like to motion to postpone this legislation until our next Senate meeting. I think that it's something that requires a lot more thought, and I think we'd all benefit from taking a look at it over the next few weeks and do some so.
is there a second? Second made. All those in favor of postponing, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, signify by saying nay. Moving to our next order of business, which is discussion. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we move into announcements. Are there any announcements? Seeing none, I adjourn this meeting at 10:27.